Trump Foundation, 98 Did you want to put a subject?
That was one of the things I was going to report on today.
So I think we'll give him an excused absence if he's on city business. If everyone could stand, and I'll ask Tori and his family to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is approval of the agenda, and questioning sometimes what we put in the consent agenda. So in the consent agenda, there's an action item about where is it? The non-objection to the Blues Club's alcohol license renewal. Madam Clerk, if we had any statements or any.
We've not received any objections.
Okay. And then also we have introduction of two ordinances. And Sarah, do we have you on the line?
Yes,
Okay.
I am here.
I just wanted to check, both of these have options for us to consider, but I'm assuming it's okay if we just leave the options to come up after the public hearing in 2 weeks. And we'll have discussion about that.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, and I just want to state that for the record. If you see options in there, we know about them. We're going to be discussing those later.
I'm choosing one.
And choosing one, yes. All right. So, what's the wishes of the council then for the agenda?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? All right. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Councilmember Alcantara,
Yes.
Mayor Carrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper,
Yes.
Councilmember Irby,
Yes.
Councilmember Graver,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hudson.
Yes.
It's approved.
Approved. Okay. Next, we have communications and appearances, and I believe we will start with our manager. Wants to swear in some police.
Before we do that, can I turn off those noisemakers?
Yes, that would probably be helpful.
The remote is there.
We'll appreciate less noise.
There we go.
Because then in an hour we'll be sorry.
Thank you for letting me join.
Madam Manager.
Yes, before we begin this swearing-in ceremony for Chief Bozeman, I have a few words I'd like to say. Chief Bozeman began his law enforcement career in 1996 and brings nearly 3 decades of experience to the Palmer Police Department. Originally from southwest Arkansas, he moved to Alaska in 1992 and attended the Alaska Law Enforcement Training Academy. Throughout his distinguished career, Chief Bozeman has served communities across Alaska. broad experience in both rural and urban law enforcement has shaped a community-centered approach to public safety. He's known for building strong relationships, supporting officer development, and upholding the highest standards of accountability. The City of Palmer is honored to welcome Chief Bozeman to lead the Palmer Police Department and continue to build on its legacy of service, trust, and public safety.
And that microphone should be on there.
Okay. Will you repeat after me?
Yes, ma'am.
I, Shane
I,
Bozeman,
Shane Bozeman,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States
to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Alaska.
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Alaska.
I will enforce these laws
I will enforce these laws
with both vigor and compassion.
with both vigor and compassion.
I will maintain the courage to withstand unethical pressure.
I will maintain
I will maintain the courage
the courage
to withstand unethical pressure
to withstand unethical pressure,
and to face fear
face fear
and danger.
and danger.
I will uphold myself
I will uphold myself
and others accountable
and others accountable
for our actions
for our actions
and answer to the people we serve.
and answer to the people we serve.
I will never betray my badge,
I will never betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
or my character,
or my character,
and I will guide my life both on and off duty
and I will guide my life both on and off duty
by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics.
by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics. Thank you.
Opinion. I believe Chief Bozeman wants to swear in some new officers. And then we'll take a break after that so we can congratulate all these.
In the past 3 or 4 months, we've hired 3 new officers. If I can have those 3 come forward. So,
Look at that. Good practice.
our first officer was hired March 31st. This is Officer Kellen Stock. Kellen served 6 years in the U.S. Coast Guard before joining the Homeland Police Department in 2019. Since then, he's come to be with us. He brings a lot of knowledge, hard work. He's can't say enough about him. I actually got to work with him as my patrol partner up until last week, and the young man is going to do a lot of great things for our community. So he's joined tonight by his, I don't know if I can say this, my wife may get upset, beautiful wife, Jess, 3 boys, Caleb, Chase, and Cody. He couldn't do his job without their love and support. So, and our next one is Joseph Masul Jr. He's a 15-year veteran of the United States Air Force, starting his law enforcement career in 2021 with the Police Department in Hutto, Texas. He comes to us with 4 years of experience. Joseph's married to his amazing wife, Becky, and together they have 3 wonderful kids, Jordan, 15, Lily, 12, and Joshua, 11. Joseph always knew he wanted to be a police officer, and we are excited for him to join our department and be a positive influence in our family-oriented and growing community. Today, Joseph is accompanied by his family, Becky, Jordan, Lily, and Joshua, as well as his father, Joseph Sr., mother, Tina, and grandmother, Emma. Becky will be pinning on Joseph's badge when we come to that time. And then, last but not least, Corey Harmon. He joined us June 23rd, my last birthday. He's retired from the Los Angeles Police Department as a detective supervisor with 21 years of service. He's here tonight with his wife Darla and son Thomas. And His 3 other children are either out of state or up on the slope working. Correct. Awesome. So, and they all bring just a ton of value to not only the department but the community. They all share the same community-oriented philosophy that Palmer PD has been blessed to have the previous leaders like Chief Shelton, Jamie Hammond's here. Those guys have really laid the foundation for it. So just like Manager Circle did, when I have y'all face me here, or do this all at the same time. Good with that?
Yes, sir.
Good, raise your right hand. All right. I state your name.
I,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States
to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Alaska.
and the Constitution and laws of the state of Alaska.
I will enforce these laws
I will enforce these laws
with both vigor and compassion.
with both vigor and compassion.
I will maintain the courage to withstand
I will maintain the courage to withstand
unethical pressure and to face fear and danger.
unethical pressure and face fear and danger.
I will hold myself
I will hold myself
and others accountable
and others accountable
for our actions
for our actions
and answer to the people we serve.
and answer to the people we serve.
I will never betray my badge,
I will never betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
or my character,
or my character,
and I will guide my life
and I will guide my life
both on duty and off duty
both on duty and off duty
by the law enforcement code of ethics.
by the law enforcement code of ethics.
For this one yours. We can have the representative who will be standing there tonight come up.
No, no, take that off. Yeah.
Cheating.
Yeah. All right. Take your vest off. All right.
And we'll take a 10-minute break or so to congratulate these people.
Get the picture. You sign this.
very productive and positive meeting. And as a reminder to contractors, the Palmer Municipal Airport Lighting Project is currently out for bid. The submission deadline is Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025 at 2 p.m. All bid documents and specs are available on the city's website. Interested and qualified contractors are encouraged to submit proposals before the closing date. And as city manager, one of my responsibilities is supporting our workforce. On tonight's agenda is the introduction of a code amendment that would change the current residency requirement for department directors, which currently requires them to live within 5 miles of city limits. This restriction has led to several unintended consequences that we're now dealing with. Just as a reminder, I spoke to you a little bit, but it does hinder career advancement for high-performing, long-serving employees who live just outside this 5-mile boundary. We risk losing institutional knowledge and department stability, especially at a time when we are in leadership roles that are residency requirement in its entirety for directors. Lastly, there's been discussion surrounding the airport master plan and the long-term future of the golf course. While there are no immediate plans to cease operations at the golf course, it is important to clarify the status of the land and its federal commitment. The golf course is located on property that was purchased using the FAA Airport Improvement Program funds in the 1970s and the 1980s. By accepting and using these funds, the city agreed to conditions that the land would be considered federally obligated for airport use. This requirement has been in place since the original grant agreements were signed decades ago and continues to apply under all FAA AIP grants awarded to the city since then. Although the FAA allowed the city to develop the land as a golf course, it was with mutual understanding that the property would eventually need to be developed for aeronautical purposes and in line with airport operations, or it's to be sold at fair market value with all proceeds returned to the airport. And to provide additional context on this matter, I've asked John Dementi to offer a department update tonight. Mr. Dementi?
John Dementi. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much for having me in here. I just want to kind of expound a little bit upon what Ms. Circle has said. And to give you we'll start off with an update at the airport for now, and then kind of move into that. What you're going to see over the next, probably in August, are 2 pieces of legislation coming forward. One of them is going to be for some snow removal equipment, attachments for the loader, basically to improve our snow removal capability at the airport. We're going to spend in the neighborhood of $100,000. 95% of that is covered by the federal government. So our obligation is going to be about $5,000. The other piece of legislation you'll see coming forward is going to be for the lighting project, which as previously mentioned is out for bid right now. I expect to bring those bids forward to council to award the bid the first meeting of August. The city is obligated about $297,000 towards this project, and again, the FAA is going to be providing the rest of the funding to finish the project off. We're expecting it to be somewhere between the $3 and $6 million range. We'll know more when the bids come in. Again, the first meeting, we're looking to award the bid that first meeting of August. Then we go back to the FAA, apply for a grant, and when the grant is awarded, we'll come back to you, hopefully in the September timeframe, possibly October, to accept the grant and move forward with the project. As you can imagine, we're probably not going to get any work done on this year. This is more of a funding for a project to be completed next year. Kind of moving into that, there's for accepting each one of these grants, there's a 19-page document, grant assurances. The grant assurances are authored by the FAA. It's a 19-page document, and it applies to every federal grant, AIP grant, given to every airport in the United States. Basically, it just reading through just a couple of passages in here. So it applies to each of the individual projects. I just told you about 2 projects we're bringing forward. It applies to each of those projects throughout the useful life of the facilities developed or equipment required. So for the lighting project, it'll go for as long as the lights last, or the entire project lasts, and the blades, it will apply to them as long as the equipment lasts. And so that the assurances will, for those particular grants, will expire either at the end of the useful life or at about 20 years. However, there's more conditions in here, and one of them is says that there shall be no limit on the duration of the terms, conditions, and assurances with respect to real property acquired with federal funds. So I'll say that one more time because this passage is pretty important. There shall be no limit on the duration of the terms, conditions, and assurances with respect to real property acquired with federal funds. So the funds we're talking about tonight with respect to the golf course were provided by the FAA through 3 separate federal grants from 1975-ish to about 1986. And there's no expiration on the grant assurances that go with those funds. So the city is basically left, as previously mentioned here, with 2 options. We can buy if we want it to remain as a golf course, we can buy the golf course at fair market value from the FAA, and the funds would go to the airport, and the golf course can remain a golf course. And the other option is, of course, not to do anything, in which case the FAA is going to require that we develop the golf course as part of the airport. There's some more specifics I could read to you out of here, but I'm not gonna belabor my time with that. We do have right now, the reason that the golf course would be developed is because there would be a demand for aeronautical use in the land. So basically, somebody who wants to fly an airplane and build a hangar wants land, and we don't have the land to provide them. So right now we have about 13 acres adjacent to the Palmer Fire Training Center. It equates to about 3 lots with the way that the land is shaped and the depth of the land. Since those 3 lots are vacant right now, we can say that there is no demand for aeronautical use of the Palmer Airport at this time. Once those lots are developed and leased, we don't have that argument anymore. So what that means is that there is a time, the clock is ticking on a decision that needs to be made. We don't need to make this decision tonight. We don't even really need to make it this year or really the way I see it even next. In my opinion, we have about 3 to 5 years to make this decision. So this is something for council to think about and plan for moving forward. Next year, with council support, of course, the airport is going to undergo a master plan review. So it's the airport's version of a comprehensive plan. So the airport will we basically hold a bunch of public hearings. We present a bunch of topics to everybody, and we take everybody's input. It starts with, in my mind, it starts with the Airport Advisory Commission, who kind of leads the charge on the topics and the presentations. It goes to the public for opinions, and then it comes into here for a decision. It comes in here for acceptance or anything. But basically, where I want to lead to with this is that the final decision on any of this lies in this room with you, with the city council. This is not anything not any decision that I'm going to make, obviously. And it's going to be something that's presented to you with all the facts and all the information that I can possibly give you. And that's all I have for this evening. Can I answer any questions that you have?
Council have any questions? Councilmember Alcantara?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, John. As City Manager Zirkle mentioned earlier, I think you reiterated some of this stuff goes back to the mid-'70s, late '70s, and of course, Palm Golf Course has been around as a functioning golf course for 35 years. So I appreciate your thought process, and probably know that, especially in the last few weeks, especially me, I've been hearing a lot about this issue, just all of a sudden kind of, and I'll admit, didn't pay a lot of attention to what was going on. And I know Herman Brothers had a contract, build a great golf course. It's a crown jewel in Palmer, and it's fantastic. And you know, the people that we're going to hear from a ton of folks. I like your thought process that this could be a decision you made a year, 3 years, 5 years from now. And I don't want to put the cart before the horse too much, but is there a potential even down the road that if they said that those 3 lots were purchased and now we're out of property, that they can reconfigure the golf course? I think of holes 10 and 11, you shrink those up, you want par 3s. Is there a chance that alleviates and buys another 25 years if that's possible? I mean, I'm glad it's not something it's something you're gonna address it on Thursday. It's gonna be addressed down the road here in the next months or even years. But certainly there's a lot of fear out there that you're going to take the golf course away. Hearing a lot of things. So I appreciate that, and I guess the question is, can it potentially, I'm not expecting you to have an answer right now, but can you piecemeal in the sense that if they had to alter the golf course at all, which they had footplaces and other things, but if they had to alter the golf course, is that a potential remedy down the road?
I could say we could certainly look at phasing the project. I guess that's how I would look at as phasing it out, as phasing the project.
Excuse me, may I interrupt? Is it possible to turn this off? It's interrupting the noise.
This one?
That, and you need to be close to the mic so we can hear you.
Just point it toward your back, away from the mic.
Forgive me for interrupting you. It's just hard to understand you with the noise.
Okay. I guess I'll reiterate then. Is that better?
Yeah, you're doing good.
Thank you. Sorry.
We'll put you in for a
I'll
raise.
turn that off. Let's see here.
I apologize for interrupting you.
Running anything electronic. There we go. Sorry, sir.
No,
So to reiterate the point, it's just, he mentioned that we're going to run out of property. There's 13 acres of usable land.
I know, I'm a pilot,
My
I
point
know.
is, if you chopped off holes 10 and 11 or shrunk them, hole 11 is a really long par 5. You can shrink those down to potential par 3s. It's not a perfect world because it makes it a par 70 course instead of a par 72 course, but that potentially gives you a pretty substantial piece of property just by refurbishing or redoing those 2 holes down the road. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen in the next 3 to 5 years, but if that had to happen 7 to 10 years from now, if folks come in and want to have, I think to quote you, aeronautical use of property, I was asking John if that's even a potential to do something like that down the road. And thank you for telling me that you couldn't hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
I certainly see that as a possibility, yes. I can't answer crystal ball it, but that certainly seems like a solution to follow for phasing the golf course or phasing the project.
Councilmember Graver?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the update, Mr. Dementi and Manager Zirkle. I, like Councilman Alcantara mentioned, we gave a lot of comments on this, and I know that several people told me there's a whole thing on Facebook about it. I tried to stay off there, but I know that that's where a lot of people get their news now. Is there any possibility of the city Facebook page maybe posting something to explain that information? Because I know that it might dissuade some of the different rumors that are going around, and also just clarify that for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mr. Mayor.
we are actually working on a draft public statement for that to address these questions and to post on our Facebook page.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's great. The other thing was, and I know we talked about a possible airport update happening on August 12th, and I realized that things have been, a lot of people have been questioning some things at the airport, so I realized the importance for doing that tonight. I did have some constituents, though, that were planning on coming on August 12th, since I told them that was possibly the update for the airport. And so I don't know if you have talked about it recently, but is there any way that we can, and I realize this is, you can't make everybody happy, obviously, but we've had a lot of constituents complaining about the noise at the airport who live in that area, and I just wanted to know if there was some way that we could gently enforce the fly-friendly policies of the airport so that maybe people would be more inclined to fly the patterns that are stated in the, I think it's just a pamphlet, I don't know if it's online, and I don't know, I'm assuming you guys have talked about it already, but I just thought I'd throw that out there since I don't know if I'll be here for August 12th meeting.
To answer, I'll answer the fly-friendly program. I will be here August 12th. I should have legislation in front of me August 12th, and I'll give another update on that day. And we'll be here for anybody wanting to talk about the airport as well. To answer about the fly-friendly program, it's more of a guideline that we put forward. It's how the community would like pilots to fly. Enforcement of it is our authority to govern an aircraft stops when the aircraft leaves the ground. It actually even stops even before then once they start in operation. So we can ask folks to do it, and what basically it's the carrot, right? And there is no real stick behind it, except that there are consequences on the ground. I know it's a very difficult. Enforcement of it is very difficult, if not outright impossible.
Councilmember Irby.
Yeah, you said that one of the solutions would be to buy the property back at fair market value. Do we have any idea what that is and what kind of hoops we'd have to jump through to accomplish that?
To determine fair market value, it's an appraisal. However, it's because we're appraising, the land is very technically used, so the appraisal is going to be fairly complicated. It will likely run, I had an estimate last year of about $20,000 for an appraisal. And it's my understanding that land value over $1 million is going to require a second appraisal for sale. I would anticipate that the golf course is worth more than $1 million. It's 144.75 acres, approximately approaching 160 acres. And going with just what little I know about the land values in the valley, we're into 7 figures right now. At worst case scenario would be 8 figures.
Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to ask if there was a way to get a copy of any of those AID grant contracts at any time, just so that the council could see the language and stuff, because I would hate to request that you read the whole thing, and sometimes it's kind of tricky to find those online, if that's possible. I appreciate that. And then I was also wondering if there was any land directly surrounding the airport that could be purchased for the expansion that might run the city less than purchasing the golf course.
We can look into that for sure. I don't know of any land that would be available for purchase right now.
Councilmember Hudson.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just thinking that if there was any land that had surrounded the airport that maybe could be purchased for expansion, for that expansion, but I do understand the conundrum the city is in currently, and I just think our city manager and our airport manager for the update, for the transparency. I really am hoping that this really helps the community just build some faith in their government, and so I know sometimes it is tricky to come forward and say, this happened and it really stinks and now we're going to get a bunch of backlash, but I just really appreciate the transparency and the honesty, and I'm really hoping that helps the city be able to move forward together and decide a good way for us to move forward. So thank you so much for that.
Councilmember Alcantara.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one last comment. I have no idea if it would ever be for sale, of course. It's working vegetable, potato field right now, but there's a lot of acreage off of hole 5 and hole 16 at the golf course right now, and I have no idea if that's a $1 million piece of property. I would guess it's somewhere in the 30 to 50 acre range. I mean, I know it's a substantial piece of property, but I also don't know if it would ever be for sale. I mean, I go back a long time in Palmer, so I've seen a lot of hay fields turn into homes and potato fields turn into subdivisions and other things, and it's not exactly don't exactly groove on it, but who knows? People that own that property may or may not want to do. Something to think about for the future, I think, maybe not for August 1.
Madam Manager, you have more for your report?
No, I'm finished with the report. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Newton. Next is the mayor's report. I had a written report. Is there any questions from the council? Okay. City clerk's report. Madam Clerk.
I don't have much to report. Just a reminder that candidate filing opens on July 21st. Packets will be available at that time in person and online. And back a couple months ago, the council tasked the city manager with seeing about upgrading the system in here. We talked about it, and we decided that usually Chambers is kind of under the clerk's umbrella, so I've kind of taken it over with Colby and city manager. And so we did go to Sound Decisions and got a quote just to get an idea. One of our main problems that we're having in this room is these microphones. These microphones cause a lot of issues. So his main recommendation was to start with replacing these microphones, add some speakers. So there'd be speakers here and back there, the pendant ones, because they work really well, and then they can zone them, kind of turn them off and fine tune them to make for better sound. The dilemma we have is it is $92,000 to upgrade the system in this room. It's just how much money we want to put into a Chambers that we could potentially change Chambers when the new library is done. I know that idea has been bounced around. So no decision needs to be made tonight, of course. I just wanted to throw that out there that the city manager and I have been working on it, and we do have this estimate. I know that we would like to go to streaming our meetings live. Right now what I do is I record them on Zoom, and then I turn around and I post them onto our YouTube channel and the website. We can stream with what we have. The problem is it'll sound like what it sounds like, and it'll look like what it looks like. So just food for thought. We wanted to let you guys know we were working on it, and we can always touch on it later or even for the next fiscal year. But that's the end of my report. Just some thoughts.
Any questions? Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much to Benji to our acting city clerk and to our city manager for bringing those numbers forward and doing that research.
Councilmember Alcantara.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll second those thoughts. Thank you, Benji, city manager. Any idea how old this system is?
I'm pretty sure that we put it back in 2020, 2021, so it's really not that old. I don't know how old cycle of an AV system, but it just seems like it's not that old. So I'm not sure.
Okay. Any other questions for the clerk? All right, city attorney's report. You still with us, Sarah?
Indeed. On the theme of food for thought, council will see, and I believe that the city manager has put some maps in front of everyone as well, but I put together the 4 different options, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for making sure we clarified that to the public. It was on my list too. So there are 4 variations of both ordinance number 25002 and resolution 25-030, and only one of those will be chosen, if at all, at the council's discretion. And so I just wanted to put out what those are, and I'll be available for questions as well.
Okay. Alternate Deputy Mayor Cooper.
Thank you. Sarah, I have a question for you. I didn't see it in the requirements for the city manager's residency that included sewer water district. I only saw 2, maybe I missed it, I only saw 2 options in there.
Let me look at that. I
would assume that it would be the same as the director's, that would include the same 4 options.
It certainly was my intent in the options that we were understanding. My apologies if that's not in there. I'm skimming as we're looking. We went back and forth, and the resolution was a little more complicated in terms of a process. There was a little bit of a debate between us, and I appreciated the expertise of the city clerk clarifying, but we were wondering, do you concurrently do an ordinance and then change it and then go back to the resolution? So I think the resolution that would put it on the change the charter, then there would be a future ordinance for the city manager that would also match that. But I believe, I was under the impression that there should have been 4 for each one, but that verbiage would be the same, consistent at council's discretion.
I know this isn't my report, but we can always have the option as to amend it if that is the decision that the council chose to go with. If we decided to go with sewer water, it is amendable, of course.
Absolutely, thank you, Benji.
Any other questions for the attorney? Councilmember Graver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if this isn't the same question that Councilman Cooper was asking, but the map we have in front of us only shows a 5-mile and a 10-mile option, and there's no 8-mile, and then
that's the map that was provided to me.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that the 8-mile and the other options. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Any other questions from council? Okay. Moving on to audience participation. Council meeting rules protect your right to testify and be heard even if others in the room disagree with you. Council meeting rules also ensure that those attending can express their views if they do not interfere with the rights of others to see and hear the proceedings. At all times, order and decorum will be maintained in keeping with the civility and dignity of the legislative process. Please be respectful during audience participation. No disruption to city business or threats of any kind will be allowed. Individuals who cannot follow these guidelines will be removed. Any threats against others could result in criminal prosecution. Please sign in, state your name, and 3 minutes per person.
Thank you.
We'll open audience participation.
Thank you. Forgive me if I'm rushing or pushing it too fast. My name is Tom Robertson. I'm passing around a picture here of a memorial that I would like to present right outside this doorway here. I'd like to put it by the flagpole, and there's a light there. You can't read that on that picture. That rock is about maybe as wide as this table, but not quite as tall. And it has a memorial to our peace officer, Jim Rowland, who was shot and killed in the line of duty. I used to maintain when I did the maintenance for Cars Gottstein Properties over here at the old car store, I'd maintain it, and then we had flowers there, and I could buy a flower, and it was quite a nice little a place, a memorial years ago. Cars Gottstein made me move it out of the way, and currently it sits up at Jim Rowland's parents' house, also James Rowland. They have both, his mom and dad have both deceased, and the property is going to be sold off of what's called Drift Lane? Well, anyways, it'll be eventually, it's going to be moved, and the family was talking about moving it out to the cemetery because they didn't know where to put it. And it's not a kind of a thing you could just pick up and walk around with. It takes a little bit of equipment to do that. And I want to put it out here because it's something visible here. Out of the graveyard, it's not visible out there. There are not many people that would come, and the people who come there have their own stress to go through at the time they're usually visiting. I think when a peace officer is shot and killed on the line of duty, I believe the city owes that honor and distinction to have a memorial that's very visible and very honorable. I think it's a disservice if we don't have something like that. And that's why I'm asking I'm asking here, maybe there's some other place you have in mind, but if you like, I'll get that picture blown up where you can read the whole caption that's on the memorial. But it just basically says James Rowland, when he was born, when he died, and that's about it. So with you, does anybody have any questions about what this memorial rock looks like? Has anybody ever seen it before when it was at the Cars Gottstein Properties before we moved it? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. All right. Again, I can't say this loud enough. It would be a disgrace and a disservice, not only to our peace officer that was killed, but to his family that was from here. I think that's the minimum, the least we can do. Okay, I got something else, but I guess I gotta wait.
There's another chance later.
All right, do I sign it again for later?
Well, when you come up here. You don't have to sign twice.
Okay, thank you.
And I mentioned to our manager that I believe we have some kind of something in code or policy about doing memorials. I'd be curious to kind of investigate that. Yes, ma'am.
I have not wanted to come back in here. I know some people are appalled when the mayor's wife says something. Well, blame it on the mayor because he moved me in the city limits and I'm a resident here. There's been a lot of speculation on Facebook once again about why we didn't go to Japan. So I just want to be clear so you can stop all your nonsense. So I had cancer last year, finished my radiation in October, or in September. You guys started all this fun stuff and the recall in October, thank you. And then I went on vacation in January and I broke my arm and I felt like I couldn't do an international trip. So the mayor decided to not go without me. So all your other speculation and accusations can stop on Facebook. I thought that if we talked about if you run the recall, we could help bring unity and communication. That didn't happen, did it? Because the first meeting, you certified the vote, and well, not all of you. Some of you Victoria had money and time invested in that recall, so she didn't, but the rest of you certified it, and then you called a special meeting and you fired the clerk. and you were pretty proud of yourselves. There was some transparency there. You knew that was coming. You fired the clerk because of the election or because she got along with the mayor. You wouldn't want a good working relationship between your clerk and your mayor. Anyway, you fired her, then you patted each other on the back. Your little count is very well encouraging to one another. That was the best meeting ever ran from what I heard. That did the best thing you could do was fire a clerk because you didn't like an election. That's how diplomacy works in Palmer now. This has been horrible. You guys have accused these men on this council of all kinds of stuff, but no investigation. And I heard from a councilwoman, well, we didn't need an investigation because we didn't do anything wrong. Well, what about the people who you were accusing? Maybe they deserved an investigation to either prove what you were saying or to shut you up. But you didn't want an investigation to the point that you called a special meeting to stop an investigation that Richard Best tried to push through. So, but you didn't want an investigation. You didn't want to prove it. You just wanted to continue to slam people that you didn't like. And I don't want to come back here. Not how to run for council. That would be probably more fun, sit on that side.
I'm not sure who's next on the list.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Kathy Goforth. I'm passing out a flyer. I gave the clerk a flyer that I made because we have a history with the Matsu Health Foundation in this city. The Matsu Health Foundation was created to be an altruistic entity that would benefit the citizens of the valley. Instead, they have an agenda, and the agenda is anti-white racism, CRT, DEI, LGBTQ, and child mutilation. And when I see the new grant that's coming out, and the fact that grants, even in the 1970s, have things that can bite you if you don't look at them, you really want to look at the grant that's coming up, because I'll speak to it again. Because it says Palmer has to abide by the guidelines and policies of the Matsu Health Foundation. Who's running the city? The Matsu Health Foundation or the city of Palmer? See, I'm married to a Native American, and he was extremely annoyed at the fact that the museum tried to change the history, saying that Palmer was only built on land that they had stolen through colonial means and through violence from the Native Alaskans. And I fought that because they had the word in there that said they're sitting on unceded territory. And they had to take it out because it was illegal. It is ceded. That means there's a treaty, and the treaty was the 1972 Alaska Native Land Settlement Act signed by President Nixon. And I want you to know that that was started and passed and advocated by the chairman of the Matsu Health Foundation Board of Directors. She was there at the ceremony making sure that they could say that the land the museum sits on is unceded, which it is not. Now, I also want you to know that when in 2022, when the Braided River Festival, we called it BARF, when the BARF thing happened with the Chamber of Commerce, okay? All of a sudden, we decided to change Colony Days to Braided River Festival to BARF, okay? And they decided to change Colony Christmas to Homewood Holidays. That was a Matsu Health Foundation grant of $10,000, also from the Board of Directors. Chairman, okay? And it was to push another bit of anti-white racism and DEI into Palmer. I want you to know that there's also a gentleman who runs around visiting all of the camps that are in the schools for children. His name is Mike, I believe, and he buys pizza, and he talks to the children separately without their parents' knowledge about their gender and how they feel about gender, if they really are the right gender, and et cetera, et cetera. And he has a grant from the Matsu Health Foundation. So they have an agenda. I'll speak more to it later, thank you.
Good evening, my name is Tyler Healy. I am here tonight to share some information on a memorial service for my father Tom, who was the city manager in Palmer from 1999 to 2007. He died in May. He's a 25-year Palmer resident and, as mentioned, 8-year city manager. He also served as public works director and, of course, sat in many meetings just like you all are now in Palmer, and before that in Skagway and Haines. So, yeah, the early 2000s, I think my dad helped the city and the valley really grow into a more modern city, while also working really hard to maintain the small town feel and charm that he loved and that many of us love as well. So this Friday at the Palmer Depot, 5 to 7:30. It is the date of his 75th birthday, so we're going to be celebrating his birthday and celebrating his life. And so I would like to invite the council members, the community, anybody that knew my dad and appreciated the work that he did for the city to please attend, share the word, and honor him. I would also encourage the council in the city of Palmer, if this isn't already in discussions, to recognize Tom in whatever official capacity you find appropriate, because I believe, and many folks around the valley believe, that he did a ton to move this city forward, and he called it his home and became a grandfather here and all the other things that help make our community strong. So I have one copy of the memorial announcement that I can leave with the clerk, and I hope to see many of you there. Thank you.
Who's your dad?
Tom Healy, he was the city manager here earlier.
I remember.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, council members. My name is Cindy Hudgens, and well, I guess the reason I'm here to speak is kind of a moot point, but I still have to get up here. I've lived in my house for 22 years, 22 years ago, and yeah, it's over by the airport, which isn't an issue. Small planes fly over, and okay, been hearing some bigger jets here lately, but I was not aware of this old grant rule that this property was going to be taken over one day for the airport, and I am concerned. There's a lot of people that live in that area, and how many people know about the noise that commercial aviation is going to cause? Will it devalue my home? Because nobody's going to want to buy a home right in the path of commercial aviation. And I see now that there's nothing I can do about it, but apparently I have 5 years to sell, maybe, if I don't want to live in aviation, in a commercial aviation town. So I guess I would like to have a little more information, what kind of commercial aviation we're talking about. I mean, are we going to have huge airliners flying overhead that are going to shake the windows of my house? Or what? Anyway, I guess you are preparing something that we can know, but if you could include that kind of thing, like what kind of commercial aviation we're talking about? Because I really didn't plan on moving. I like my little house. The original part was built in the 1940s. It was stood in the 1964 earthquake. And we've done a lot with it. So we've created a little oasis that, I don't know how much of an oasis that would be with jetliners flying overhead. So I would just appreciate more information. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the use of the railroad spur from Spinard Builders over to the airport. My name's Al Steinbach, sorry, thank you. And I've had the privilege of living here 2 years and working as a volunteer on the 557 since January. And by way of review, 557 reached a major milestone last year when they filled it with water and pressure tested it. This year, the aim is to fill it with water, light the fire, and build up full steam pressure, and then next year be able to get it out operational on the rails. There are several folks who are on the volunteer team that have experience operating historical steam trains, but they each have their own characteristics, and my understanding as a newbie in the team is that there's an expected time of learning its quirks and a desired 10 days of continuous operation or near continuous to kind of break it in. And the track between Spinard and the airport is an ideal place for that. It's not only good for the 557, but it would be good, I think, for the publicity for Palmer, and then getting that back on the rails for the state of Alaska even. I do want to mention that, and I have a flyer here for the 557. These are also available over at the museum. Patrick Duran, who's the leader of this organization, would love to give any of you or anyone in the community a tour of the unit that's housed over in Wasilla, down below Home Depot, just behind Burger King off the parks. And his number and contact information is here, so I'll leave this with the clerk. And I've got copies of anyone else here that would like one of those. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for audience participation?
Hello, my name is John Prevo. I'm currently the acting chief for Palmer Fire. And I know that tonight was just the introduction to Ordinance 25-002 and that the public meeting about it is next meeting, but I also know that you guys go home and do your research, so I wanted to speak on it a little bit. A little bit about myself. I moved to Palmer in 1995, so 30-year citizen. I joined Palmer Fire in 97. Graduated from Palmer High in 01. So I'm coming up on 28 years with Palmer Fire, 24 years as an on-call responder, 10 years. During that time, I did 10 years full-time with City of Palmer Public Works. I've been full-time with the fire department for the last 4 years, and Palmer is in my blood. Palmer's in my heart. For the last 5 years, I've lived way in Wasilla. Palmer is still in my blood, still in my heart, and I think for the last 5 years I've been doing a good job. So I just want to speak that residency really doesn't dictate my dedication, my commitment to the city. I'm here every day that I'm supposed to be here, more days that I'm supposed to be here, ask my wife. And so I just want to speak to that. Because of the current code, it says that fire chiefs and directors have to be within 5 months. So this spring, we purchased a house that meets that in anticipation of me putting in for the fire chief position, because the housing market sucks. It is really hard to find a house. We found one, we bought it. As of 2 weeks ago, I live within that boundary. One of the options in Ordinance 25-002, the one that talks about the utility boundaries, actually is more restrictive and pushes the house that I just bought outside of that boundary again. So self-serving, I hope that that one doesn't get picked. I feel that would be a step backwards for the city, but more importantly, I think that that my dedication shows that it doesn't matter where you live. I'm here, I'm doing my job. Some people say I'm doing a good job at it, so hopefully you guys can think about that as you're thinking about this between now and the next meeting. Thank you.
Is there anyone else for audience participation?
And do I have to wait till the next go around?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Okay. We'll close audience participation. Next we have public hearing. Resolution number 25-005A, a resolution of the Palmer City Council amending the budget for the City of Palmer, Alaska for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2025. We'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this resolution, 25-005A? You come forward. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close the public hearing. What's the wishes of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Second, okay. Do we have any questions of the manager? Do we have any amendments? Do we have any? Councilmember Hudson?
I just had a quick question. Are we supposed to wait to do the move to approve until after we have a discussion time, after our training, or are we not changing that?
I guess I didn't follow what. Usually we would have it moved to be on the floor so we can have discussions and make amendments as needed.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any questions? Councilmember Alcantara. Sorry,
Yes,
my head a little taller.
Sorry, I didn't actually hear Councilmember Hudson's question, so just wanted to talk a little bit about this this new project fund. Obviously, like the fact that we're creating a fund to park that money that we receive from the state and to keep all of our library funding pieces of the pie kind of separated out from the rest of the budget, so we can be as transparent as possible with folks when we talk about a $16.5 million library or $17 million or $15.5 million, whatever the figure ends up being. So the other pieces of are just a normal kind of mid-year movement of small revenue net increases from the course of the thing. So the only kind of major difference in this one is really that creation of the library project fund. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, thank you. I did have a quick question. The money that we received from the state of Alaska, was that stated that it was directly for the library project?
Yes, it was.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from council? All right. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Councilmember Cooper,
Yes.
Councilmember Alcantara,
Yes.
Councilmember Hudson,
Yes.
Mayor Carrington,
Yes.
Councilmember Irby,
Yes.
and Councilmember Graver.
Yes.
Unanimous.
All right, I think I've figured out. So what I'll do is ask for maybe a staff report for resolution 25-025 before we do the public hearing. And then get it on the floor. Madam Manager.
The Mental Health Foundation wants to grant the City of Palmer $500,000
purpose of building
for
the
the
library.
purpose of the library.
Okay. Any questions for Councilmember Hudson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have a couple of questions about the grant agreement. The first thing is that in the first paragraph, it says that we agree to comply with the Foundation's policies and guidelines as revised from time to time. Is there a way for the city to see the policies and guidelines that we currently would be agreeing with?
Oh, are you still?
No, I can still want it.
Okay.
I'm sure I can pull up their website and download some of that, or I can ask our contact to send them over to us.
Okay. Councilmember Hudson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did try to find them on the website, and I was unable to locate those, so that's the reason I'm asking now. And then, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, continue.
Also, it says that the grant award for the funding specifications is per the grantee's submitted pitch and proposal received January 30th of 2025. I was just wondering if we know what the proposal and pitch was given on January 30th, as it doesn't seem that we have solidified exactly what we're doing with the library project. And it does say that we would have to then submit written permission to amend the project per the January 30th issue proposal. And so its budget or extent the grant period prior to any revisions incurring any expenses not outlined in this agreement. And that modifications to the above spending must be set forth in writing and signed by the foundation and the grantee. My concern is that since we do not know what was pitched and proposed as of this second, we don't really know what they're approving to give us the funds for, and since we also don't have a final plan, that's kind of where my concern lies now. So do you have any answers to any of that?
Madam Manager.
I wasn't a part of the January 30th, 2025 discussions in which the city of Palmer presented this opportunity for a grant award from the Madison Health Foundation. My assumption looking at the paperwork is it's just for the reconstruction of the Palmer Library, and they wanted to help out and give us that money. Any significant changes would have to be done in writing, and I would interpret significant changes of drastically changing the nature of the library, from changing from a library to a completely different municipal use.
I know I was at least at one of the meetings at the Madison Health Foundation. From what I recall, we spent a lot of time reminding them how much money they've given to other libraries and that they really should be including Palmer in that giving. All right. You have more, Councilmember Hudson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I personally, and there may not be council support on this, and that's okay, but I would move to postpone this until we can see what was proposed on January 30th, so we know what we're agreeing to, and also what the foundation's policies and guidelines are that we are also agreeing to follow for this project. So I would move to table it to the next meeting until those are things that this council can see that we're agreeing to in this grant agreement. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay. We can't move it at this point. We haven't had the public hearing and it's not been put on the table yet. Is there other questions? Councilmember Graver?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a few similar concerns. Would it be appropriate to ask our attorney her opinion on this now, or should we wait until after the public hearing?
Go ahead and ask.
Okay. Madam Attorney, do you have any thoughts on what Councilwoman Hudson was speaking about?
I'm looking at page 59. I was also not a part of the January 30th pitch, but I would agree with the definition the city manager tried to explain in terms of material changes. So usually when you're talking about a contractual change in a grant, when you're talking about modifications to the spending specifications must be set forth in writing and signed by the foundation, the grantee, those would be agreed on in advance. Once that's accepted, then the other piece, when you're, sorry, I'm skimming for that specific question, but she is correct that traditionally it would be a massive change, like that we would actually, it would require the city to be in violation of the grant outlines, meaning that they gave us money for the library, we turned it to a city hall, something to that effect. That would be a violation, a contractual violation on behalf of the city. So it does sound here, and I would defer to the city manager, but it does sound like there would be a agreement outlined that says in this grant agreement for any specific modification. So I would imagine that this is a very similar grant to what the other libraries have received, which was did not require any grant contingencies before the funds were scheduled to be paid out, as Section 2 references. In terms of the policies and procedures, I'm not familiar with the foundation's policies and guidelines. I would imagine that that would be sort of like what the FAA requires us to follow all federal guidelines as well, their policies and procedures. So I would imagine the foundation has civil rights bases, that sort of thing that we're agreeing to comply with, which would be probably pretty similar in nature to what federal guidelines are as well. That's not a very clear answer, but hopefully we're talking very broad concepts here.
Councilmember Graver?
Thank you, Madam Attorney. I appreciate that. On that, just one more question. This might be just a matter of semantics, but I noticed that our resolution states that this grants for the purpose of constructing a new former library, and that's stated several times in that manner. And then in the grant agreement, under in consideration of this grant, under items 1, actually maybe just item 1. And under amount proposed grant, it says the reconstruction of the former library, and I just wanted to make sure that doesn't, like I said, it might just be a semantics thing, but does that mean to say for the construction of the new former library?
Madam Attorney?
Again, my apologies, I haven't been part of the negotiations in that. I would imagine that when the actual agreement and the pieces of that go out, that's a conversation that the city manager would be having with the Matsu Health Foundation. I'm sorry, Colby, I don't mean to bump to you, but maybe you could share some of the what no strings attached meant.
Madam Manager?
If I'm not mistaken, you were just looking at the wording of reconstruction versus construction. I can go back and clarify with Matsu Health Foundation if they would be amenable to changing that one word to construction.
I just didn't know if it was a point.
So, I think the intent is to give Palmer the $500,000 to help us rebuild the library. If we use reconstruction or construction, the intent is still to help us.
Councilmember Cooper?
Thank you, Mayor. It's to David Wilson, who is part of the Matsu Health Foundation now. Trying to contact the number of the members of the council, and he did get a hold of me and was wanted to let me know, and this is to reinforce what the city manager and the attorney said, that $500,000, they do not want to put their fingers in the pie to tell us how to build the library or what to do with it. They're giving us this $500,000 to build our library. They give out multi-millions of dollars throughout the state, and they're just trying to help us with $500,000 to build the library. They do not want to, be the dictators, if you will, tell us how to do it. They just want us to build one. Thank you.
Councilmember Alcantara?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to chime in until after we heard from the public, but I'll Steelers did point out a couple of indiscrepancies, and one of the things that worries me too is the grant period itself. And it may be something to do with the Matsu Health Foundation fiscal year, but the grant period ending on March 30th, 2026, which is only 8 months from now, worries me a little bit. But I will say, I talked to David Wilson, the Director of Public Policy for the Matsu Health Foundation today, and one of the things he reiterated, and I'll reiterate it again when a motion's made after we hear from the public, is that there's absolutely no rush on this and no big concerns if we were to delay this for a couple of weeks to allow himself to be back in state. And you point out that Mr. Wilson's been at the last several city council meetings. He just couldn't be here tonight. And potentially even bring his boss to the next city council meeting. So I think just some of the things that have been pointed out, the things not quite ready for prime time, and I mean, we can certainly move it here from the public and then see if we can make a motion to push it off for 14 days. Thank you.
Okay. So we will proceed and do a public hearing and see if the public wants to speak to this. We'll open the public hearing for resolution number 25-025.
For someone who doesn't want their fingers in the pie, it's amazing that they tried to change us to bar. Now, I also want you to know, in case you don't realize this, that there's a law against sexually explicit material being given to children. It's 1161.128. And I also want you to know that there's a Supreme Court decision that was made 2 weeks ago, and it's Mahmoud versus Taylor, that says any LGBTQ literature that is given to children, the parents must be apprised of what's happening. And you may want to research this, because I have a picture that someone sent me of the director of the Matsu Health Foundation's office from 3 years ago. And on there was a desk loaded with books on LGBTQ, and on DEI, and on BLM, and on Antifa, and on anti-whiteness, and on colonialism, and on all of that. And they said on them for donation to the libraries. I have that picture. So please do not say that they do not have an agenda. So when it says in there on that line that you have to follow, the Palmer has to follow the guidelines and policies of Matsu Health Foundation, who on earth do they mean? All of you? And for how long? Because their policies and guidelines are very interesting if you actually look at them and what actually I can prove to you. The person who wanted to change the history to show that the natives were forced off the land was the board of directors president. The person who gave the $10,000 to the Chamber of Commerce to change us to bar was the board of directors chairman for Matsu Health Foundation. The person who was delivering all those books to libraries, and I have one of them. I checked it out, and it was for babies, and it says, when he was first born, his parents told him he was a girl, and they gave him a really pretty bedroom. Now, who on earth would do that to their child? Those are illegal now. If you read Melwood versus Taylor, I suggest all of you do. Any of those books that are in our libraries, we may want to be very cautious of. Because if a parent decides to sue the library, they're going to use Melwood versus Taylor, the Supreme Court decision. So please, take that line out. That line that says you are beholden to follow the policies and guidelines of the Matsu Health Foundation. How on earth do you know what they are? I can show you what they are. They did Braided River Festival. They had stacks of books on that desk. And that director doesn't work there anymore. She retired. Because I mentioned this at their last meeting last year. So please, see if we can get that line out of there, because I'm all great with $500,000 free and clear, but this is not free and clear. That's a huge line. And there's not even a deadline on it. Look at what happened with the airport. You're going to be beholden to the Matsu Health Foundation's policies and guidelines forever? I can guarantee you, if BARF got 3 people removed here, 19 out of 20 people I talked to on the street were not happy about that. I will be on the street again come this election cycle for anybody who votes for this as it's written. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak to resolution number 25-025.
Cindy Hutchins again. I have read along with Jackie, and I believe I'm with our Councilwoman Hudson also, that we need to know more information. No strings should mean no strings. It shouldn't mean that you have to follow their rules and regulations, that you have to abide by what they say you have to abide by. Free money should be free money, but we all know that nothing's free. So I would take a look at their rules and regulations for them. Make sure you read that contract very, very carefully, because it is very easy to manipulate words to say one thing but mean another thing. I, for one, do not want to be beholden to the Madison Health Foundation. They fund every leftist agenda in the Valley. We are the conservatives here in the Valley. We're the only ones left. The left has Fairbanks, they have Anchorage, they have Juneau, they want Palmer, they want our children. The Madison Health Foundation wants our children. So I think we need to be very, very diligent, and I agree with Councilmember Hudson that this should be delayed, the decision should be delayed until you have had a chance to see what their guidelines are, and that the contract has that taken out of it. Please consider this. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak to ordinance number 25-025?
Mr. Mayor, council members and staff, my name is Herb Bischoff. I live here in Palmer in the city limits. And I want to compliment you on your concern about the relationship you have with somebody who's giving you money. I appreciate and applaud your effort to do due diligence, and I think that's excellent, and you should do that. I'm curious how long you've known that this money might be available to you, and perhaps that due diligence could have been done before resolutions brought forward like this. Nevertheless, 2 weeks is not too long to wait, and certainly it's well worth your time to check the policies out that the Madison Health Foundation is asking you to abide by. I might want to remind you all that every agency of any size that's public or nonprofit or has any worth has policies and procedures that adhere to what their value and what they believe in, notwithstanding the city's policies and beliefs and ethics and so on. And I challenge you to compare your own policies with any other policies of those who are giving you money to help facilitate the well-being of your community and our community. Please take the time, due diligence, but keep in mind that your policies are not exempt from the community and its values and what you propose and espouse to do. Some of the behaviors that you've heard this evening about what the Madison Health Foundation does is not reflected in the policies that they have written. So be aware that policies that are written is what you might be wanting to consider, not behaviors of individuals, especially if they're not representing the foundation. Thank you for your due diligence again, and I hope next meeting that you'll be able to accept some money on behalf of the community.
Please start with your name.
My name is Paula Pettyjohn, and this is like the first. I feel faint. This is like my first time to actually speak up, and I'm not like Mr. Prevost. I haven't been here forever. I was a Wasilla girl. I've been taken over by the dark side Palmer, and I love this place. And it's just like a fabulous little jewel that I used to pass through, and now it's my home. And I love this, and I'm seeing changes since I've been here, but they're not necessarily for the better, and it doesn't reflect the community. Oh, I should have mentioned, I was over in Wasilla like for 45 years, and then, but what I'm seeing in the growth and the different laws and the different things that are happening, it doesn't reflect like the community it used to be. It's really changing, and I think that you guys are here at a real critical time in the growth of Palmer, and the things that you're doing, the decisions you make really are going to impact the children and the families and the community itself. And so, when I was looking at the agenda, and then I saw this thing about free money, I couldn't believe that I managed to live 72 years, and I had to wait this long in order to see free money, because when you have a grant, that's not free. And I actually do grant writing, and I know there's no such thing as free money. And so when Councilperson Hudson and Graver asked questions, the replies I heard were, I assume, I imagine, I believe, I think, but nobody knew about what stipulations and criteria are attached to this grant. And there's always stipulations to a grant. And when a grant is actually done right, people come and check. They want to know that you are complying with that money. And so these answers here, nobody knows. And so I think that I appreciate Councilman Alcantara saying put it off for 2 weeks to actually find out, because I'm seeing a room full of people actually gonna vote on something that is gonna affect this community. If you don't know what Matsu Health Foundation wants from this city with that money, then you could be selling out this precious jewel for $500,000. I mean, that makes me sick to my stomach. And so, so I'm gonna encourage you to find out what those policies and guidelines are before you vote on it and accept that money. However, I will be the first person to do a happy dance if it really is free money. So anyway, so thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for speaking to resolution number 25-025? Okay, we will close the public hearing. Now I think we need a motion and a second to get it on the table so we can then approve. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there questions, comments from the council? Councilmember Alcantara.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we've heard from multiple people in the public and others here on the dais that this thing's not ready for prime time. We pointed out several pieces of examples of why it's not ready. And also to reiterate, I spoke with the policy director of the Matsu Health Foundation, who said unequivocally that no issue at all putting this off for 2 weeks and having himself and potentially Esther Pitts, his boss, here on the 22nd. I think it'd be a fool's errand to try to march this thing forward and not pass it, and then where do we end up? You know, it's just, I think the better part of valor here is to postpone this for 2 weeks, not bring it up for a vote that is going to potentially torpedo it. We certainly don't want to not have an opportunity to have this $500,000 and just there's no rush. We have $9 million plus parked in a CIP account. There's absolutely no rush to do this tonight. And I personally would love to see both the deputy mayor and the city attorney here in the room when we pass this piece of legislation. So if we can't do the smart thing and delay this by 2 weeks, then we have to do the tougher thing of voting it down, which I think would be a bad move.
Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to kind of second the opinions that were shared by Councilman Alcantara. I would also like to share that I think it's very important that the city attorney and the council have a chance to review the policies and procedures of the Massive Health Foundation before accepting the money, so that not only our attorney but this council can understand what we're fully agreeing to. And I also think it would be very important for us to understand and have a chance to see what was presented on January of 2025, if that's possible, just so that we can make sure that that's even what we're looking at now. That's something that possibly might already need to be amended with them before we even accept this grant money. If there is like a difference in the square footage that was approved, or just the scope of the project, or what the council is doing with the library project. So I do think it would be a real shame for the city to not accept this funding, but I also do think that we should respect what our constituents have asked us, and also things that this council has brought up, and just move to postpone so that we can review those policies and guidelines and we can see the proposal. Thank you.
Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make an amendment to this resolution that I'd like to move this to a date certain, July 22nd, next meeting, and for further discussion after subsequent and pursuant to information that we received from the city manager regarding the contents that we discussed in this discussion.
Okay, you said something about an amendment, or?
Yeah, we have to amend this, or we have to just move it?
We can postpone.
All right, I'd like to move the date certain July 22nd then for the read.
Okay, so it's been moved to postpone until the next.
Thank you.
That's a second?
Yes.
So it's moved and seconded to postpone to the next regular meeting on the 22nd of July. Is there any discussions? Okay. Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please. This is a motion to postpone to the next regular meeting.
Correct. Councilmember Graver?
Yes.
Councilmember Irby?
Yes.
Councilmember Hudson?
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper?
Yes.
Mayor Carrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Alcantara?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Okay. Yeah, why don't we take a short break?
Let me know. Yeah. Thank you.
This is our.
Yeah. Cool off a little though. Chief. See, the state troopers have one. Nobody takes care of it. Flowers are falling down. And they got a dog. Please help us if we're learning dog. I don't have anything against dogs. We want to show our police officers we really respect them. We owe them that distinction. They're not gonna look for it. Did you get a picture? That's it. Yeah, but I wanted you to have the wording, you know. Yeah, no, absolutely. Here, send this for your email. There it is. Have it on display. No, you're not. No, you're not. There's a lot of other people. Everybody wants to do
Let me answer. So we've got about 300 feet outside the building. And those, so between initially to get some data here, they would do it so. And the intent was, but then usually all the budget was to do it yourself in the big times. So I'll get out of the way. That's except for that, that's my understanding. I don't think I was supposed to be the first music, but no, the last. Okay. Okay.
I already have one. I have all the
Patrick was very pleased to have you.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. It must have been back in May. Once he said his name, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that was pretty good. What was he saying? Yeah, he said we were thinking that. Yeah. He did, with volunteers and the various things. I always see when we do a meeting with the manager or whatever. I didn't say this. I just said great. Oh, we got everybody here? Okay. Let's come back from our break.
That felt so nice for the time.
I did open the second. Next we have ordinance number 25-003. An ordinance of the Palmer City Council amending Palmer Municipal Code 2.04 City Council to add section 2.0416 limited health powers to borough, transferring limited health powers to the Massachusetts Borough for use of funds paid to the borough under the National Opioid Settlement Agreements. I guess all right, let's have a staff report, see if there's any questions from council. Staff report is see you last meeting.
Sure, we addressed the last city meeting, and Nick, we'd like to come up and speak more about the opioid settlement and the transfer of powers that we can revoke at any time.
Sure. Good evening. Nick Spropoulos, Madison Borough Attorney's Office. Here again to talk about any questions you might have. I did follow up, as promised, on a couple of the questions that were asked last time. One of the questions asked was, what made a municipality in Alaska eligible? Under the settlement agreements, you had to have more than 10,000 residents. So there are 9 in Alaska: Anchorage, Fairbanks City, Fairbanks Borough, Juneau, Kenai Peninsula Borough, Ketchikan Borough, Kodiak Borough, Mat-Su Borough, City of Wasilla. Those are the participants, 9 of us. The allocation was, there's about $50 billion in total settlement right now. I know I said 25 last time. More have settled since then, because I went under the opioid settlement to get all this information. About $50 billion settlement. Alaska's percentage is 0.258455039%. What that translates to is about $65 million to the state. 70% of that goes to an abatement fund, 15% goes direct to the state of Alaska, 15% gets divided among the 9 municipalities according to a formula based on population. The borough's percentage of that 15% is 15.4726%, which translates roughly $3 million. So that's what we'll be looking at over the life of the settlements. As I said last time, settlements are spread over several years. We expect them in the 2034, 2036 range. However, they can accelerate some of their payments on that regard. The question was asked also, what did Fairbanks and Kenai, other second-class boroughs, do? The borough of Kenai runs a hospital service area, technically 2 hospital service areas. So they don't have a concern about using health and social services powers because they can simply take the money, allocate it to their service area, and it's out the door. Same thing in Ketchikan. I did email with the borough attorney up in Fairbanks, and Fairbanks put a ballot question on to obtain a new area-wide power. We weren't really interested in doing that. We thought this mechanism was better. It's more limited. It expires. It ends. And not interested in going to the voters and getting an ongoing power that we don't intend to exercise beyond that. So that's really my follow-up to everything that was here. Mr. Hayes, who was out on vacation or visiting family last time, is here tonight to answer any other questions regarding the administrative process. But if there's any other questions as to the legalities, as to the transfer of powers, it's really more like a sharing of powers. I'm here to answer.
Councilmember Alcantara.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here again and your very technical answers to the 0.25% roughly. And right now the 7 digits after that. So the 1/4 of 1% that last week is. So I'm curious because I thought last time you were here, with the board said, I thought Houston, Wasilla had already passed this, and Wasilla have to pass this even though they're a recipient, or they're eligible to be a recipient.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, so this has nothing to do with who gets money. What this has to do with, the Matsu Borough can't spend money unless it has power to do so. So if Congress allocates money to all municipalities in the United States for the police department, the Matsu Borough has a problem because we can't spend it, period, because we don't have a police department. We can't even give it away to anybody else to spend because we don't have a police department. So we can't do that. So the request here is one of the ways we can get a power to exercise is through transfers by the cities. And as we discussed last time, both the city of Houston on February 13th and then on March 10th, the city of Wasilla passed ordinances. I think Wasilla's is identical to yours in that it's more of a sharing agreement. It says that the borough can spend money on the opioid settlement, but reserves to the city their power to do it as well, which is what yours says in the event that a different settlement comes out or a new opioid settlement. Actually, Mr. Hayes and I got some emails recently regarding the Purdue Pharma settlement. There's a bankruptcy going right now. One of those billionaire families, there's a new settlement coming down because they tried to declare bankruptcy to get out of paying, and then lawyers intervened and upset that settlement. Well, upset that bankruptcy. So now we're looking at a new settlement, so money's going to get added to the pot. In the event that any of these allocations change and Palmer does wind up getting money, you retain the power to spend it. Our issue is that without obtaining a power, which one of the ways you obtain a power is transferred by the cities, we can't spend it, either inside or outside the city, period. So.
Councilmember Alcantara.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kind of follow up. So, whole little Meatloaf song about two out of three ain't bad, but if you only had Wasilla and Houston, would you still, as the borough, be able to, in either different areas of the borough or something of that nature, would you still be able to expend these funds with just those two, or would you not? Would it high center what?
Well, I don't know. I can't tell you that after the last meeting I was here at, somebody approached me on my way out the door and asked if the senior center within the city limits of Palmer would be an eligible applicant to get a grant. And I said, well, yeah, if they have opioid problems, you can imagine somebody who might have pain and get, opioids. But if we don't have if we don't have Palmer granting us permission to spend money, most certainly it will not be spent within the city limits. That is a virtual certainty. Outside of that, it's an unknown, and I can't really answer that question. We'd have to do a deep dive into the state statutes and legislative history. I can tell you that I very rarely advise my borough assembly to take risks.
How long have you been there, so?
Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think a good way to put it was how you just said it, getting permission to bring this money to the city of Palmer. So my question for you is do you believe that by the city giving health powers, these limited health powers to the borough, does this legally bind the city to Exhibit E remediation uses for this city?
No.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Hudson.
Thank you. So in this contract, it says that our change to our code says that the city hereby transfers the powers to expend funds in accordance with the allowed uses of the opioid settlement agreements to the borough to the extent the borough receives the funds. The city retains the power to expend the funds in accordance with the allowed uses of the settlement agreement to the extent that the city receives the settlement funds. So, so you're saying though that we wouldn't have to do one of the Exhibit E's if the city accepted this money? It's just in the contract.
So the city's not getting any money from this agreement, right? So the city's not a participant in the national opioid settlement because to be a participant in Alaska, the municipal cutoff was 10,000. I don't know what it is in all states. And so if future settlements happen that have different allocations, or future settlements happen that say, oh, we're going to give one to every municipality in the United States, that's hypothetically, then you would be subject to whatever happens there. This language is identical to what Wasilla passed. So in the event in the future you get something, you would be bound by a settlement agreement anyway.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, sir, I understand that. I understand that the reason that you guys are asking for these limited health powers is so that you guys can bring this funding into the city of Palmer.
Right.
Because without these temporary limited health powers, but that say in this contract permanent in nature and shall be incorporated into the municipal code. So I do understand that this can be terminated at any time if this is brought forward to amend this ordinance.
Right.
But what I'm asking is that you guys, basically what I'm saying is that you guys are asking for these health powers so that you can bring this money into Palmer to do these core strategies of this plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, may I ask another question?
Yes, Councilmember Hudson.
So who from Palmer, do we know who from Palmer will be chosen to go onto the grant committee to choose which of these core strategies will be implemented within the city of Palmer for this money?
So to be clear, I don't, and the administration of the grants will be Mr. Hayes' territory, not mine. To be clear, the borough's going to set up a grant program for all of the borough.
Yes.
It is not going to be certain monies that get allocated here, certain monies get allocated there. And when he forms, when Mr. Hayes can address this better than I can, but it's my understanding that when the borough forms a grant committee, we will ask the city, can you, probably either through the manager or maybe it comes to the council, I don't know, can you send somebody over who's knowledgeable in either granting or awarding or opioid or who has an interest, who has the time to be part of our committee to score, rank, and award grant monies. So it's a committee to be formed to score everybody, not just grantees within Palmer. It would be the same committee for any grantee anywhere in the borough, and they would be ranked according to what they're asking for, not where they're located.
Okay. Is there any other questions from council? Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, thank you. You said that it was nearly impossible for this money to be spent from you guys, but seeing in some research I've done, it seems that you guys have been able to grant some of this money out. So I'm, I guess, not understanding if there's different places like the Dream Center and My House in Set Free, Alaska. If those places in Wasilla in Houston already passed these, why can't the funding go to places like that have asked for the funding and those cities have already approved the temporary health power transfer to places? I guess what I'm getting to is that the concern is that if you have a grant board of one person from each city that comes forward, and then that one person gets to decide how this money is spent within their city, or where this money could go within the city. So you're telling me that the grant board doesn't choose where the money goes?
The one person doesn't choose. The committee will score and rank. So while there will be a person from the three cities, I think it's envisioned as a person from the three cities, two people from the industry, for lack of a better, somebody who's in the business of treatment providing or has an interest. And again, Mr. Hayes, I think, can address this better. And then one from the borough and one from the potentially either the state or the Health and Social Services Board. Again, somebody interested in the area. And that committee of 7 will score, rank, and allocate amongst all proposals. So the person from Palmer does not get to say, oh, this one in Palmer is going to get awarded. The person from Palmer can rank them high, but all 7 would be also ranking everything that comes in, because potentially there's going to be, like a lot of grant programs, there'll be more applicants than money. We had some limited success, as I addressed last time. We're sitting on about $800,000 right now, give or take. we were able to get about $75,000 or $80,000 out into the community with things like education and training, and some other things like some type of first responder training and assistance and support, because those are powers that we have. We have powers of education, we have area-wide ambulance powers, we have area-wide first response medical powers. So grants that were kind of tied to that, we were able to get out. But the big thing here about health treatment, telehealth, mobile intervention, wraparound services, continuum of care, you mentioned My House, housing, job training, rehabilitation, neonatal care, transportation, daycare for people, all of those other types of services, we simply don't have as a second-class borough, because what we can do is bound by state statute. And when you look at the list of powers that we have, those things aren't there. It's one of the reasons why during COVID, I signed on to the letter to the Attorney General when he was out there telling everybody that if boroughs want to do a mask mandate, they could. Because I was one of the borough attorneys that said, no, we can't. We don't have health powers. We can't tell Walmart they have to have masks. So we're very limited in the form of government that we are. That's the way the voters chose. And that's the way that people want it to be. However, with this, if this ordinance passes, we now have no question that we can get the money out the door for all of the uses in Exhibit E. And that's what our limiting factor would be, just Exhibit E.
Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you mentioned, the MAP program and the warm handoff transitions, the treatment for incarcerated population, increasing funding for jails to provide treatment to inmates, to provide them with clean needles and Suboxone. Expanding syringe service programs, providing comprehensive syringe service programs to wraparound services, which means homeless people, access to sterile syringes and linkage to care. Do we think that those things are things that all of the constituents in these cities want to see in the city, or are those just things that we think that our constituents want these? I mean, because now we can understand why it was voted on by other places for the constituents to decide if this is something that they wanted to accept or not, for the health powers to be given for these kinds of things. Right?
So simply because that's an allowed use, I'm not aware of any needle programs existing out here. Obviously, I'm not a subject matter expert. I'm the law guy, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm conservative in my outlook. In my tenure as 20 years as the borough attorney, we've never been sued and lost over somebody saying we've acted outside the scope of our powers, and I intend to keep it that way. So this is a power sharing agreement that we can then engage in these uses. What actually comes out and what grants get scored the highest will be up to the committee, not up to me.
Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Then I guess my question for this council would be, who would represent the city of Palmer for the committee? And I think that would be a very important thing to consider before we consider passing this. But thank you for your answers.
Council have any more questions? Okay, thank you. I guess we'll do the public hearing now. So we'll open the public hearings for.
Did you want me to?
Oh, sorry. Forgot Mr. Hayes is up for it. Retract that.
My name is George Hayes. I'm the Deputy Borough Manager. And I wanted to talk about the process, how we kind of got here and the importance of it. I'm on the Governor's Advisory Council for Opioid Remediation, one of 9 voting members. Got involved that way and then was asked to kind of head this effort up when we started, when we accepted to be a member of getting the money. So Nick went over the details of that, but what we asked initially was, what do we want to spend this money on? What should we spend the money on? And the Governor's Advisory Council encouraged all 9 statewide members to do some kind of a public needs assessment. What are the greatest needs for opioid remediation within your municipality? And so we looked at that from 3 different ways. We did a borough-wide public survey. We had 257 responses on that. We did 3 public meetings, one in Wasilla, Palmer, and Willow. And then we set up a needs assessment committee. It went for about 6 months. And those were experts in each of the remediation fields. James Savage operates Dillon's Place, a recovery detox center. Ms. Dawn Deaver is a harm reduction remediation specialist. She's a RN. Ms. Leslie Chisholm is primary prevention remediation. She's mental and behavioral health supervisor. And Mr. Carl Soderstrom, treatment and recovery. He's a founder and CEO of True North Recovery. And Michael Carson has about 5 hats, including the president of Matsu Opioid Task Force. He's vice president of My House and Matsu Homeless Youth Center. So we had these members together, and we did the surveys, and we did the public hearings, and then we met 19 times with these experts to figure out what's the greatest needs in the borough. And after that, almost 8 months total, what they came up with, the committee voted on that, and I was a facilitator, but I was a non-voting member. And so the 5 experts came up with treatment essentially was number 1, prevention number 2, recovery number 3, harm reduction number 4. But they also wanted to emphasize that there is a very big need in all 4 categories of remediation for public outreach and information. We've got to spend money on reaching out to those who are addicted, to those who need the treatment, to do the remediation. And so when they created the legislation for this, then those 5 categories were awarded percentages of the total of the money that we would be getting as a borough. 30% went to treatment, 30% for prevention, 10% recovery, 10% harm reduction, and only for the first 5 years, 20% would go to media outreach and information. So when we set that up, we said, all right, we're going to give grants out to qualifying organizations that participate in one of these areas, and we'll put it out borough-wide, and it didn't matter whether it was My House. For instance, when we only had education and training powers, and we put it out last year for that $63,000, there were 5 applicants only, and we awarded $63,000 just for education and training, but only in the treatment, prevention, recovery. They couldn't do the services. That's the big difference. They could only do education and training within those 5 or those 4 areas. So that's how we got to the needs assessment, and then we said, okay, let's set up this grant program like we've done for many other grant programs we do regularly at the borough. And we said, okay, who are going to be then the participants, one of the committee that would decide who got what amounts and so forth. But within that, the legislation was passed by the Assembly for those amounts, so we have to spend 30% of whatever money we have on treatment. We can't go above that, so we can only award grants that take up to 30%. And for each one of those categories, we can only award what the Borough Assembly has approved for each one of those categories out of the total of almost $3 million. So, given that, we said, okay, one from each one of the cities, one from the Needs Assessment Committee, a member who would not be asking for any of that funding. And there's already one there who said, I would serve on that, but I will not be asking for any of the grant money. And then one from the one from the Health and Human Services Board, and either 2 from the borough or 2 from the Health and Human Services Board. So those 7 members then would look at all the grants coming in and the categories, because when they apply, they have to apply for a certain category. And when those all come in, then they'll be scored within that category. And then we'll look at the amounts that we have and then award the grants from there. So, given that, what are your questions?
Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you tell me how those people were chosen for the board? Were they just chosen suggestions? Did they apply for the board to determine these percentages?
The Needs Assessment Committee. Essentially, we went to a couple of them and said, who is out there within these fields? And we didn't have people kind of fighting over it, but we knew some of these, and then we reached out to other areas and said, do you have anybody that's willing to serve in this? So we didn't have to make a choice and say, hey, 5 people want to serve on this board in treatment. We just didn't have that. So we essentially took the first one after advertising it that came to us, if they were qualified, and they were, so.
Any other questions? Councilmember Alcantara.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Hayes, thanks so much for being here. And thanks again for how much work that not only you put into this, but the borough and the folks to this point. I mean, at some point, you have to take a leap of faith. And we're a half mile away from you guys, and we have issues with what's going on at the borough. You're certainly within proximity to go have discussions with yourself or Nick or whoever. And I do like in the resolution where, it says the city area local insurance or ground power for any reason or no reason by passage of ordinance, you put in this section. There seems to me to be adequate safeguards, and at some point, like I said, you just got to take a leap of faith and trust that the work that's been done to date and the work that will continue to get done will be of value for citizens across the entire borough, because the need is out there. Certainly the need is greater than $63,000. It's greater than $3 million. But whoever sits in that committee is going to have to make the difficult decisions on who gets within those parameters you talked about, the percentages you talked about, who gets money to try to address this problem. So I appreciate the fact that you were able to join us tonight.
Any other questions from council? Okay. Yes, now we'll go to a public hearing. So we'll open public hearing for ordinance number 25-003, an ordinance of the Palmer City Council amending Palmer Municipal Code 2.04, City Council to add section 2.04.016, limited health powers to borough, transferring limited health powers to the Matsu Borough for use of funds paid to the borough under the National Opioid Settlement Agreement. Anyone wishing to speak to this, please come forward. Start off by stating your name.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Herb Bischoff. I live in the city of Palmer. I'd like to speak in favor of your support and sharing our power with the borough in this situation. There are over 30 nonprofits in the city of Palmer, and it's my understanding that if you do not share health powers, that there's a possibility that any of those nonprofits, including the United Way, the Navigation Program, the Senior Center, the Palmer Community Foundation, may not be able to legitimately apply. I'm not sure if that's the case, but it's a possibility in this big area, and as the borough attorney said, it would take a deep dive to understand whether that's even possible. So in that regard, I again would like to encourage you to vote in favor of this. If any individual council member chooses not to vote in favor of that, I would very much appreciate, as a community member, to hear what the objection is. Thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to speak to ordinance number 25-003?
Good evening. I'm Cindy Hudgens, and I don't agree with this at all. drives me nuts. For one thing, the explanation on how this whole thing came about is all well and good, but why would money be awarded to an entity that can't give away, that has no powers to give away? That's crazy. And government is a funny thing. I mean, I've been in the council, these meetings enough. I've seen what happens, and there's so much backdoor dealing, and you know, every contract has loopholes. They all do. I mean, look at what Walker was able to do with our PFDs. Loophole in the contract. So, what government is going to let loose of something that they've been given? Really? City of Palmer has health. They have the health powers. The people voted on what they wanted the borough to be. And now you're being asked to expand that? That goes against the vote of the people. The borough was not given health powers for a reason. I don't know that reason. I don't remember the vote. I don't know how long ago the vote was. But when that government was set up, that's how it was set up. They should have never been a recipient of that money. They didn't have the right to be a recipient of that money because they didn't have the powers to give it out. And by us giving them over our health powers, whether they're saying it's shared, it's temporary, it's limited, wow. Anybody believes that is nuts. Thank you.
Hello again, my name is Jackie Goforth, and I wasn't going to speak actually because I thought it didn't really concern me. I'm outside the city limits, but I didn't start speaking out at city councils until they masked my granddaughter when she was 3 years old in Anchorage, and they were required to mask her because my daughter-in-law followed the rules, and I refused. I've been kicked out of several different places. I was the one standing at this assembly with my mask down because I refused to wear it. They ignored me. And so when I heard the fact that this masking thing, if we give out health powers to the borough and somebody decides that we have to mask again or take a shot again or stay in our houses again or something to do with our health, have we given away those health powers to them so that they can come into Palmer and enforce them? I don't know. It sounded like a good plan, except it sounds like we're going to open up a whole lot of opioid clinics in Palmer, which it's a really small place, and I don't know if we really want that element. Like I said, I was the station manager of Eastchester in Anchorage. If anyone knows where that is, it's 99501. It is from the bases to 20th and from the ocean to Airport Heights. It is where the methadone clinic is, where all the homeless shelters are, where Beans Cafe is, and the amount of issues that I had with carriers out there are commensurate with what kind of entity is in the area. So I don't know if we really want to give away our health powers. I don't know. I don't know. There's some questions. And believe me, if you tell me I have to wear a mask again, if anybody does, I won't be. Just letting you know. Thank you.
Where's your map?
this was easier than I thought, so I'm back. So,
Welcome.
so, okay, so I wasn't sure about what this was. So then,
What's your name again?
when I was at home, then I looked, oh, I'm sorry, Paula Pettyjohn. And then, so when I was at home, then I started doing research on this. And it's actually pretty shocking. So what I heard was that there was, this whole point was to have the borough do a grant committee, and it's about grants and kind of like drug remediation. But then on the internet, it says that it is actually about transferring your health powers over to the borough, which would impact everybody within the city of Palmer. And so it gives executive power to the borough mayor to do, so think COVID, like the borough attorney said. He said they had no power to mask. You heard that, right? So they did not have the power to do that during COVID. So then because of that, then we were the only free place in Alaska where we could go about freely and shop and do whatever it was that we wanted. And then if people in Anchorage were held hostage, unless they got a car, and then they came out here to do those things. But it says that they have by transferring this power, then the borough would have the power to do mask mandates, restrictions on movement, restrictions on gatherings. It would give them emergency authority. And then, oh my word, the list was so long. So this is not about grants for drugs. This is about granting the borough power over us. And instead of us being grants root determining our own destiny and our individual liberties, then we're just gonna relinquish it. We're gonna relinquish those things to them because there's other people with a drug problem. And I'd suggest that the borough instead form a committee to get a police department. That's what they need, is a police department, not a grant committee where people on Palmer can't even determine who's gonna get money here. This is like, none of this makes sense. So anyway, thanks for listening.
Anyone else for audience participation? Oh, sorry, not audience participation. This is to speak to this resolution.
Public hearing, yeah.
25-003, sorry.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. My name is Frank Bell. Just offering a slightly different point of view. To me, it seems that it's been pretty clearly explained that these powers we'd be agreeing to share are limited and to be used for this specific purpose that could really help a lot of people. There are people out there that could very much be helped by some of this funding, and if we don't do this, we're essentially making that impossible for people, at least within the city of Palmer. I'd also just remind everybody that it's been made quite clear that you can undo this with an amendment at any time. So if the borough were to take some of the concerning steps that people have shared, you can prevent that immediately with a simple amendment. So to me, it seems pretty clear that there's no ill intent here, and it's not some kind of power grab by the borough. And I think it could really help a lot of people. So just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Anyone else to speak to this ordinance? Okay. We will close public hearing for ordinance number 25-003. What's the wishes of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any more comments? Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out a few things that are listed in this ordinance, but as someone who, not just 3 years ago, came from Seattle, and I will tell you, I went back and looked at what Seattle passed and what they accepted in the National Opioid Settlement, and I will tell you this is the exact same thing. So what I will share with you that's concerning is that we agree on the restrictions on how the settlement proceeds will be set in Exhibit E. If you guys have not read Exhibit E, Core Strategies Schedule A, I think it's pretty crazy to vote on this if you haven't read it. I think it's crazy it's not included in this packet that for us to read, for those reasons I'm sure. In addition to the restrictions imposed by the National Opioid Settlement Agreements by the borough, they may only spend the money on powers and functions it is legally authorized to provide. What are those? Whereas the borough does not have powers to provide the following as related to opioid prevention currently, unless we pass this. Treatment and recovery in Palmer. General health and social services in Palmer. Direct medical care on the streets of Palmer. Legal aid, housing and child care, case management, technology costs, clinic costs, neonatal treatment, prescription drug monitoring, law enforcement, opioid-related research and data collection in Palmer. The lack of powers held by the borough means it will be difficult for the borough to expend the funds. There's been funds expended already. Whereas the borough needs the powers to expend funds from the settlement agreements. They just told us that they've expended funds and they didn't need our health powers. They need our health powers to bring it to Palmer. So, when you want a late night snack from Taco Bell at 9 o'clock at night, and you go outside to get in your car, and there's the Red Cross there because they've been given money to come out into your streets and literally sit out there and hand out needles and Suboxone to the community, then you have people that are running around in your little area where they just handed them out, drugged out on synthetic heroin. I'm sorry, but that's what's going to happen here. I understand what they're trying to tell you. It's going to be really crazy when you have a naked person taking a shower on your front porch. That's really going to be sad. And then the next morning, you send your kids outside to play in their backyard, and there's used needles everywhere. Because not even a quarter mile away was the Red Cross, who was given money from this opioid settlement, from settlements just like this, to do exactly what's in the core strategies. So, I'm just going to clearly tell, I was asked to tell why I'm voting no. I'm voting no on the borough taking limited health powers to access and distribute opioid settlement funds in Palmer. Not because I don't recognize the seriousness of the crisis, but because this path unnecessarily has expanded government authority. It bypasses local control and commits us to programs that many in our community do not support. What they need is health powers to bring these controversial programs directly to Palmer. Programs that are not optional or abstract. They are spelled out in Exhibit E of the settlement documentation, and agreeing to accept these funds with health powers means agreeing to allow their grant committee to carry them out. These are not vague ideas or flexible guidelines. They are structured, enforceable mandates. Here's what they would mean to us. Article 1, expansion of warm handoff and recovery services. This would authorize a MAP program to be administered in your local hospitals, even in emergency settings. Supporting funding recovery services like transitional housing, child care, and transportation for drug users. That sounds really nice until you think about what that's going to do. Article 2, MAP access expansion. Funding a mobile MAP clinic to drive across the borough and provide Suboxone, a powerful drug that's supposed to be used in a treatment facility, not to be given out on the streets of Palmer. directly given to users in remote areas. Says that specifically in Article 2, to be handed out on the streets in remote areas. Article 4, comprehensive wraparound services. For Exhibit E, we could expect any time them to come and provide housing, transportation, employment support, legal services, and childcare to individuals who are addicts. This goes far beyond public health. Now we're becoming a social service administration. Then Article 5, MAT in jails, requires the provision of Suboxone and similar medications to all incarcerated individuals, introducing treatment models into our correctional system that is widely debated and universally accepted. Not universally accepted. Article 6, syringe service program, mandates that we would distribute clean needles and injection equipment to drug users, raising public health and safety concerns among many residents. Article H, the Angel program, allowing individuals arrested for any opioid-related offense to avoid jail time by entering housing and recovery programs. This may reduce the accountability and put strain on already limited local resources. Accepting this money with health powers does legally bind the city to these programs. It does. And the push for the borough to take health powers now is a direct attempt to make these programs easier to implement within Palmer. They have many other options where they can send this money. There's many other strategies to address the opioid epidemic without requiring legal changes within Palmer, without expanding government reach, and without risking our community's values and autonomy. In conclusion, the decision to expand health powers is not necessary and is not the only path forward. We can still combat the opioid crisis effectively through partnerships and authorities we already have in place. We should not commit ourselves to distributing needles, funding jailhouse Suboxone, and overriding our city's authority to access money with strings attached, and overriding the voters who decided what the borough could hold in health powers. In many ways, this approach mirrors the failed policies of SB 91. It shares the same markers, reduced accountability, expanded government programs, and a shift away from enforcement. We've already seen the consequences that legislation in Alaska causes, and I am not voting to repeat those mistakes under the label of health powers, so I will be voting no.
Councilmember Graver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, Councilman Hudson, what document are you reading out? You said Exhibit E off. Is that?
Mr. Mayor, may I answer?
Yes.
So when I was reading through the council packet, I noticed that in this ordinance, it says, whereas the opioid settlement agreements contain restrictions on how the settlement proceeds may be spent in Exhibit E to the settlements. So then I went onto the National Opioids website for this grant that's being given, and there is Exhibit E, list of opioid remediation uses, is a 15-page document with core strategies Schedule A, which is what the borough chose. And it goes through exactly what I just listed out to you, and what they would be using the money for.
Thank you. Councilmember Graver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, this thing you're reading, the Schedule A, are you saying that upon giving the borough these limited health powers, we would be under obligation legally to implement all of those programs, or are you saying that the money that we get from the grants can only be used for those programs?
Councilmember Graver.
Hudson.
Sorry, Hudson.
I thought
Sorry.
so, that's why I said it. Okay, yes, Mr. Mayor. Well, per what the code change would be, reading here, it says the city retains the power to expend funds in accordance with the allowed uses of the settlement agreement. And it also states in here that we are agreeing to use these funds for this purpose as said, spent in Exhibit E. So I think what it is that these are the ways that they can spend, well, it's not I think, these are the ways they can spend the money. They've agreed in accepting the money that these are the ways they'll spend it. And so us telling them that they have a portion of our health powers then says that they that their board that they talked about, that they brought the people forward, 20% for treatment, 10% for prevention, these are the ways that they can spend it in this core strategies document that we didn't receive, but that's listed in this ordinance.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Graver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I appreciate you reading that because I think it would have been helpful to have received that as well. I appreciate people coming forward for public comments. I also got into politics because I didn't want to be masked, and so I am really trying to understand this completely so I can make a wise decision. I've had conversations with the attorney about it. We've listened to Mr. Spropoulos and Mr. Hayes now speak about it. I don't. Sorry, I'm doing a lot of thinking on the spot, but it says limited health powers to the borough. Under A, it says the power to expend funds in accordance with the allowed use of the national opioid settlement agreements to the borough to the extent the borough receives settlement funds. So, what audience member Frank, I'm sorry, I forgot your last name, was talking about is true. So these limited health powers are not. It's literally the power to expend funds in accordance, etc., like I just stated. So it has nothing to do with masking specifically, since that was brought up, or forced vaccination or whatever, what have you, in that area. So I wanted to clarify that, and that is something that I brought up to the attorney when I spoke with her about it. As for what Councilwoman Hudson was reading, obviously, I'm not in favor of a lot of those things because I've seen the effect that different, in essence, positive interventions, that they can also have a negative impact in the long run. So that is concerning. However, since I don't see that we necessarily have to spend the grant money received in those specific ways, from what I understand, I feel comfortable voting yes on this. And I will just say that I will be the first to bring forward an ordinance repealing a section of the code if I feel the need to at any point, and I don't foresee that happening. So sorry that was a long, rambling thought process by me, but that's where I'm at right now.
Councilmember Alcantara.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have great respect for both the previous two speakers. I really respect the amount of research and due diligence that Councilmember Hudson does on not only this topic, but just about every topic that comes before us. But at some point, you have to realize that we're in a conservative city of 6,000 people, and probably one of the most conservative boroughs or counties in the entire country of 115,000 people, led by people that are conservative. I just think it's a little much doom and gloom to think of needles being shared around at Taco Bell or McDonald's. And I'm not saying it's not out of the realm of possibility. I'm just saying that I think the amount of work that's going to be done with the limited funds that are going to be available is not going to be some of the things that address. That's how I personally feel, and as is shared by the council member to my right, will be the first one to second such an ordinance to repeal powers if things go off the rails. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm sure we don't have any crystal ball, but I think this is going to help people in the borough, potentially in the city of Palmer, and I think it's wise to move forward with a yes vote. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments from council? Councilmember Irby?
Yeah, Your Honor, this doesn't create drug users, it treats them.
I'll just say that as I can understand concerns of some of the more liberal cities such as Seattle, but Palmer is not Seattle, and I don't see us moving that direction. So I'm going to vote in favor of this. I believe the borough has very carefully asked for something very specific and doesn't want. I don't think they really want to do a mask mandate. I really don't. Is there any other comments from council? Okay, Madam Clerk, you can call the roll, please.
Councilmember Irby?
Yes.
Mayor Carrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Hudson?
No.
Councilmember Alcantara?
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper?
Yes.
Councilmember Graber?
Yes.
Pass?
Okay. Next is action memorandum number 25-060, authorizing city manager to purchase insurance coverage for the period of July 1 to 2025 to June 30th, 2026. What's the wishes of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. So Councilmember Alcantara?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Manager Zirkle, I'm just curious on some more edification for myself. But let me preface this by saying that I have no problem with this ordinance or with Combs Insurance. One of the things I love about them is the fact, kind of like wolf architecture, I admire cars, hardware supply. I love places that are just stones thrown away. You can go actually talk to the people that you're doing business with and not have somebody out of Anchorage or Seattle or some other place. I am curious though, they sent you a letter on June 15th this year and said they needed operation to bind by June 20th. And I don't know what operation to bind means, but we're here on July 8th, hopefully passing this. I guess I'm just curious what it seems like a very short window for you to respond to their inquiry, to their correspondence. So maybe you can educate me on what may have happened previous to June 15th, I guess.
Madam Manager?
I received a letter dated June 15th, due June 20th. However, I had conversations with our insurance, letting them know this has to go to council ahead of time. We don't have any lapse in insurance, so not pass tonight. I don't know that it does. But they are aware that I have to go to council beforehand. And I think it was just a timing issue on their end.
Councilmember Alcantara?
Yeah, thank you, follow-up. Thank you for that, City Manager Zirkle. It seems, better coverage at a little bit lesser price, so it seems like kind of a no-brainer, but I just was curious why the time frame seemed to be so compressed. But I appreciate the work that you and that Combs Insurance did on it and trying to get our costs to the city of Palmer slightly reduced, and like I said, slightly reduced with better coverage. So it seems like a great thing to move forward.
Any other questions from council? Are we ready to vote? Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Mayor Carrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper?
Yes.
Councilmember Hudson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alcantara,
Yes.
Councilmember Erby,
Yes.
Councilmember Graber.
Yes.
Unanimous?
Okay. There's no unfinished business, there's no new business. The record of items placed on the table.
I have the picture of Officer Jim Williams Memorial, the flyer from Jackie Goforth regarding the Palmer Museum Art and History, flyer regarding former city manager Tom Healy's memorial service, and flyer regarding steam locomotive 557.
Next, we have audience participation.
Oh, all right.
Open audience participation, just so Mr. Roberson can come back.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just talking to my legs first. Okay, legs. You go down. You can do it. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. I'm still Tom Robertson, R-O-B-E-R, no T-S-O-N. Oh, shucks. See if I can get that. I guess I'll have to pass it. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to get a reference of what that's about. Thank you. For 2 years, I've been working with the city, not city, but the state and the borough mostly, about putting in what I call an emergency fill station for a fire truck down at where the construction of the highway, mile 37 on the Glen Highway. You can't see it, but the city has a water main that goes under the highway there and goes to the hospital. And for 2 years, we're working on getting that hydrant. It was down in a hole where you couldn't see it. And the fire department is never ever going to use it when you can't see it in the summertime. Wintertime, it easily gets covered up with snow. So my plan has been to elevate the hydrant 10, 12 feet. I've never measured it. Raise it up to grade and bring in gravel to make a gravel pad where at least 2 fire trucks can pull off the highway and safely fill up with water and go. So it takes 1 fireman, 1 fire truck, they're gone. And it's important to do that because when I was with the Kiski Fire Department, I started in 1975 with the Kiski Fire Department. We had to tanker all of our trucks. It's very time consuming to truck water. They're heavy, it's slow, very labor intensive. You're greatly reducing the capability to put the fire out. Or sometimes we just had to let it burn. We didn't have the water or the resources, so we just had to let the thing go. But if there was a hydrant there, I talked 2 weeks ago to the city manager, and she said they removed the hydrant. I don't know if that was just to try to remove the liability or what, but when you have a hydrant established, you've proven a necessity to be there, and for good reason. When you come and jerk it out and take it away, then you greatly increase the liability and the risk for the city by removing that. And so I'm asking for the hydrant to go back in. I've never heard of a hydrant being taken out. There's not enough hydrants in the whole world, let alone take one out. And so I'd like to have the hydrant put back in, elevated to grade, whichever the grade is. I was also asking for about 2,000 cubic yards of gravel to be put in there, make a gravel pad, so the fire truck can come out of the highway, turn around, and go back out and not get hit. I'm guessing 2,000 yards. I never measured that either. The city or the state would have paid for it, and the federal government, they would have paid for it, and I got this done years ago. Oh, I guess I need to say there's a selfish motive. My son was a volunteer fireman here, and that's why I'm selfish trying to get this done. I don't know.
That's your time, sir.
I don't know if he's going to come back to the fire department, but I want to make the fire department as safe as possible. I want to talk to my legs again. Okay, legs. Here's mine. I came up in Washington, D.C. and just got this one. Get over here. Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you. You again.
Hey, you left the
No, yeah, that's what you got to do to talk here. You know? I can show you I came up from Washington, D.C.
Hello, my name is Jackie Goforth again, and I have a severe severe problem with trusting the government. Okay, I want you to know that I was in a Patriot group in 2021. And out of 3 different Patriot groups, we were standing in line in Anchorage in order to speak on September 28th of 2021. And out of the 8 of us, 7 are dead. They died the following month of COVID. I want you to know it wasn't COVID, it was something else, and I had it too. And the only reason I survived is because I didn't go in near a hospital. And I had people bring me ivermectin. So I have a real severe problem trusting the government, who now says they don't have any Epstein files after there's somebody in jail serving time for it. Just like Maxwell, okay? I have a very hard time trusting anybody with government. And why did they have a handout for you in Houston and Wasilla that didn't have the full part in it? Why didn't they have that Section 8 or whatever that told you they would be? I told you Eastchester. Eastchester is downtown Anchorage. I used to call them the walking residents. We had double the residents because half of them were walking. They didn't have a house. You had to walk over people every day. The needles, we couldn't have receptacles. We didn't have receptacles for people to put their mail in because they were used as outhouses. They actually put new lawn down because they wanted to class it up, and it got stolen that night. And when they said, what happened to the lawn? I said, you're gonna have to drive around and see who has new lawn. Okay? That's what happens when you invite a certain demographic into the city. And if you haven't noticed yet, Palmer has a very small voting base, and it's very easy to move it liberal. And it has been a target for the last 5 years. It has been a target to get liberal stuff in here. First, they changed the ceiling or the height of buildings so they can build a community development, a community center. So now they've got it in the library. Now they want Matsu to have powers over it, and they're the ones pushing LGBTQ. I mean, they will, now they have the ability to have needles passed out on the streets. You know, if you drive around Wasilla, I went to every house for the petitions. I wasn't a petition holder, but every single person who went to a house, I was with them. So I was there for every single person who signed a petition to remove those 3 people that were here. And I talked to a lot of residents, okay? And I can tell you where the enclaves are that have all of the people that they're moving in so that we can turn Palmer blue. Because turning the valley blue would make Alaska blue. And the clue to that, the toehold, is Palmer. And so giving the Matsu Borough health powers when they didn't even give you the full picture of what it meant, that's kind of scary. Really scary. And I'm still alive out of 8. Thank you.
Anyone else for audience participation?
Sorry.
Paula Pettyjohn. Can teach an old dog new tricks. And so this, I don't know if this is even the place, but I have a concern, like a health and safety concern for our little elementary school kids that go to Sheridan Swanson. I have, we're actually moved on to Dolphin Avenue, and that feeds directly into the school, both of them. And so little kids walk, you know, over the rail belt, and then they feed down into the school. But the road is not paved, and there's no sidewalks. So they're walking right down the middle of the road. You know, you guys are talking about needles and opioid stuff, but this is really a health and safety thing. This is like kids walking down the middle of the street. And so I'm just curious why the one road that goes right into the elementary schools isn't paved and why it doesn't have sidewalks. Is there somebody that I need to talk to? I don't know. Is this your bailiwick? But it seems like Palmer, of all places, that has sidewalks everywhere, doesn't have a sidewalk there. So that's it. Does anybody have an answer? Does anybody know?
We don't usually, we usually let people speak.
Okay.
And there's council comments at the end of the meeting, and so then someone may address it then.
Oh, somebody will let me know. Okay. All right, thank you.
I think you're having fun doing this. You'll be here all night doing it.
Luke Zipsky, former police chief. Former. Someone took the job. So I'm here to speak. I spoke last time about how long or how far away you can live from town to be a director. And looking at the map, I'm outside the blue line if I ever wanted to apply. I'm inside the red line. If that's red, maybe orange. But I would say there's still a significant amount of area and land for someone to have a house and live in. The majority of our officers live within that circle, and that's the 10-mile one. And I would say that is a fair amount of room to have somebody live from town. As the bird flies, and it seems like, I remember Ms. Heath said that last time, that's the easiest way for the legal way to measure it. And I would also say that for grading for the city manager, it's just nice, easy, one number, that's all you got to remember, that's all you have to measure. And it's not just now that we're looking for, we're trying to plan this out into the future. Correct me if I'm wrong, but most city manager contracts are only about 3 years in length. That's a lot to ask of somebody to move into a very small area for a very small amount of time. The impact on their family is really going to whittle down what kind of person that can come in or what wants to move in to accept this role for a very short amount of time. Hopefully it's the full 3 years. Sometimes it's not. But it's not just now for the current city manager, but it's looking down the road. And that's what we want to graft these things looking into the future, not just now. Thank you.
You got me yellow too.
Anyone else for audience participation?
What I do?
You swore to do that. Just kidding. Sorry.
That's better. Thank you, sir.
I will leave now.
Thanks for stopping by.
Sorry.
Anyone else for audience participation?
Can I do it again?
No, I'm sorry.
No, you're not sorry.
All right, we'll close audience participation. Next we have an executive session. Do we want to bounce council member comments before the executive session?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Hudson?
I was going to make the motion. Does someone want to say something before I try to make it?
Motion for executive session.
To move. Yeah, executive session after. I was just going to make a motion for you, but
okay.
I think that
sure.
Councilmember Irving might have something to say first, so I didn't want to.
I don't have anything.
You got it? Go ahead. Councilmember Hudson.
You have to make a motion.
We just need concurrence. Does anyone object to moving councilmember comments to before executive session? Hearing no one, we will do so. All right. Councilmember Alcantara, councilmember comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Try to make it through this. Let me start by speaking about a legend, Patricia Jean Alcantara. She was my mom and dad. My father passed away before I turned 2. He died at the age of 36 years old. Left my mom 10 kids to raise. There was never a plan, but unfortunate things happen all the time. As we just witnessed with the events in Texas here in July 4th. But she raised 10 kids very well. Unfortunately, had to bury 3 of them, but the 10 kids resulted in, hold on to your hats and glasses, 106 grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. And not to keep this whole report in the melancholy vein, but I'd be remiss if I didn't speak on Tom Healy a little bit and kind of point out again that July 11th, ironically, the day of his 75th birthday is the event at the depot. They're live at 7:30, so I hope folks will join me there. I believe, as mentioned by his son, Tom served 8 years as at least as city manager. We hope that sometimes city managers can stay a really long time. And then served time also as public works director and spent about 25 years with the city of Palmer, if I recall earlier remarks. So I hope that folks can be here for that. That has nothing to do with the assistant chief. So speaking of chiefs, congrats to Chief Bozeman and the officers, Scott, Lucille, and Harmon, and my sisters are Herman, sorry. Harmon, I think, was the last name on there. And I think it's great that we're up to full capacity now, again, Palmer PD. Hopefully it's going to be that way for a long time. Have a great police force, do a great job for us. And I did want to talk a little bit about East Dolphin. I used to live at 515 East Dolphin way back in the day. It was gravelled into 44, 45, 46, I'm 60 now, so it was when I was a teenager. 45 years ago it was gravel, but I think we're on the way. We're on the way to getting Dolphin taken care of anyway. So there's the wheels are in motion finally to do something about that. And I'm just not going to keep children from coming across the tracks from the other side of Dolphin and doing things. But I want a reminder to all the testifiers that we don't get to ask you questions, and we don't get to have exchange with you as much as we'd probably like to, and be able to drill down and understand a little more about what you're trying to tell us. But that's not the way this process works. It's a couple audience participations, and you tell us what you think, and we sit back and listen, and as the mayor said, we address it here at the end. So I appreciate all the testimony multiple times on multiple topics, and I hope everybody enjoys the next couple of weeks, and see you back here on the 22nd. Thank you.
Councilmember Graver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, I won't be here on Friday for Tony's celebration. And I guess just a reminder that I won't be here for the July 22nd meeting either. And the August 12th meeting is tentative. I'm not sure yet about that. That's all.
Councilmember Hudson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, because it was brought up by a constituent, I just wanted to clarify, Mr. Mayor, that when we found out that you weren't going to Seroma, that you had decided that a few months before this trip had happened. And I think that maybe some of the council members were just feeling slighted that it hadn't been brought forward, so that we had the opportunity to delegate somebody else to represent the city with the deputy mayor. And I think that some of us are feeling kind of bummed out about it, not because I specifically wanted to go, but because I know there's other council members that would have looked forward to that and would have represented the city really well. And so I think that that's maybe what was going on, so I just wanted to clarify that. It just didn't feel like a decision that was for you to make on behalf of the entire city. I also wanted to address what's happening with the library project. Donations are being made specifically for a library, not a multi-use center. I saw several elements included in recent presentations that went unchallenged, such as an amphitheater. The bond was approved by voters, which much of this council voted to send to the ballot, and much of the constituents voted on, clearly referencing a library. I would like our city attorney to, in a future meeting, provide an update on the legal parameters of using any of those bond funds for anything other than what was specified. If the bond did not include the possibility of renovating or updating other city facilities, such as council chambers, then we cannot retroactively insert them without public consent. The reason I bring this up is because I was not at the meeting. Maybe if the majority of this council had asked these questions publicly at the last meeting, where everyone could hear the answers, I wouldn't have brought these forward now. But instead, I must assume they chose to meet privately beforehand, and those critical questions were never asked or answered in the public sphere. In addition, I would like to formally request that we bring forward a clear cost comparison of the estimated cost of constructing the library versus the cost of constructing the library plus any additional elements being suggested, such as sound systems, amphitheater features, and multi-purpose spaces. We've been told some of these items are optional, but I've seen things like a sound system included within the basic library plan that wouldn't be necessary for a library where you go to read books. That raises concerns about scope creep and transparency. Furthermore, we all should be asking for things to be brought forward, like an estimated annual operating cost analysis for the new facility, to include the ongoing maintenance and utility costs, the staffing levels and salaries needed to operate the expanded facility, insurance premiums for a building of this size and use. Before this council continues to endorse additions to this project, we all must fully understand how much it's going to cost us not to just build the facility, but to sustain it long term. We owe the public this complete picture. Frankly, I'm not sure the city can afford, can we, to build anything other than a library without going back to the voters. For example, the $5 million from the state of Alaska, did it specify it must be used for a library? I know the $500,000 from the Master Health Foundation did. It said it was just for a library, as do several other contributions we accepted. So if we're going to consider adding extras to this project, then we need to take the question back to the public in the form of a ballot measure this October. We cannot simply tack on additions and set up the city for potential lawsuits. Case in point, we've increased the square footage of the library to include office now / storage space. We're not really sure, but according to emails, they never received public permission for that. The community voted for a library, not expanded government workspace. Now regarding the amphitheater, I'm confused by its inclusion, especially considering that the city recently ran a barbecue restaurant due to parking concerns. For our city code, an amphitheater would require 1 parking space for every 4 seats. Did we ask about that? Based on the current site plans, I don't see where that parking is accounted for. I went through and counted every parking space versus every seat that was shown in that plan. There's not 1 in 4. So where's the parking going to go? Did council ever request an amphitheater option be presented? I don't believe we did. And speaking of parking, let's talk about another local restaurant. Have they come forward for additional parking permits since they began hosting outdoor events? Or are they operating under the old variants while utilizing full streets for parking, something that wasn't extended to the barbecue business? We've had other business owners invest in dedicated parking lot, yet variances are inconsistently granted. We as a council need to start making a choice. Either we can revoke all variances and enforce the code uniformly, or we amend the code and prepare for backlash. But I don't feel like it's fair for us to continue picking winners and losers of who can maintain in this city as a business. I am asking that we bring all parking variances that have been granted back before this council for review, especially as we consider future developments like an amphitheater, which will further impact our already limited parking downtown. Maybe the city can consider relocating the cement planters from along the roadway to areas such as sidewalks near the new library or closer to the depot in order to open up angled parking and relieve the ongoing parking shortage in that area. I believe it's time for this council to consider including a code compliance officer in the next budget cycle working under our police chief, someone responsible for the consistent enforcement of our city codes and our fee schedule. This would also have a high return of interest for the city in this new library build. Our officers cannot handle that, and they're not being asked to do that legally. This isn't not only for business fairness, but to protect our community's trust in local government. I would then request council support in placing these matters on future agendas. Also, during the last 2 council meetings, over 30 minutes of our constituents' time was used to repeatedly attack and harass me. This is not what this time is intended for. What's worse is that the ceremonial head of the city has allowed it to go unchecked. This kind of behavior is not just unprofessional, it's targeted, political, and has set a dangerous precedent for how these council members are allowed to treat one another in a public forum. 3, possibly 4, of you at this dais are running for mayor, and not one could call a point of order to stop that. The city attorney has even clarified before last meeting that the 10-minute limit was requested to be followed by this mayor, not to stifle speech, but to maintain order per our code. The mayor appointed this individual to temporarily serve on this council, and he has only used this platform to launch personal attacks. It's not just damaging his credibility, it is reflecting directly on the mayor's judgment and undermining the integrity of this entire body in the eyes of the public. I am formally requesting that this behavior stop immediately, continuing to make personal attacks, calling out constituents by name, and presenting unverified claims as facts is not only unethical, it is putting the city in legal jeopardy. This is opening the door to potential lawsuits, and I am trying to tell you that this needs to end now. Thank you.
Councilmember Irby.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was very sadly, when I heard the news that Tom Healy passed away. Tom Healy was the city manager when I first was elected to the city council, and he was an impeccable professional. I did not hear that he had passed away. I wish I would have known, but yeah, I will be attending his memorial service. I wanted to give a shout out to Public Works and Nate especially. I'm knee deep in a very large construction project at my house, and the city has gone above and beyond to make sure that everything has gone smoothly, and I appreciate that. And then I wanted to make a comment on social media. Social media is where hate goes to thrive and the truth goes to die. Two very respected members of this community have had to defend themselves from online trolls, and I just think that it's a sad environment. And that's all I've got to say tonight.
Alternate Deputy Mayor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, congratulations. One thing I noticed is you still have kind of a little bit of a southern accent going on there, and we need to, maybe work on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Now that you're up here, right?
Yeah.
A little bit on the fly friendly program. I do have a pilot's license, and like John Mendy said, the airport cannot dictate what those folks can do. It's an FAA, and the FAA has a number of rules that they have to abide by. Whether it's 500 feet over population or whatever. One of the complaints that a lot of people get are, gee, they're flying at night or they're flying early in the morning. Well, for you to be able to get a license, you have to have, quote, nighttime hours. And nighttime starts at dusk and it starts at dawn. So sometimes it's not dark, but it's kind of, the sun is set and you still have that half hour or whatever. So that's why sometimes we get a lot of airplanes flying at those times during the day. And yeah, they fly right over my house all the time. And sometimes wonder, who's flying what kind of plane. And I think that today we had a couple of jets fly by. It's kind of interesting. But on Mr. Healy, I was on the council and then I was mayor when Tom Healy was our manager. And I've known him for a long time, and I was really, like Ken said, I was absolutely surprised. I knew that he was at Maple Springs, but I didn't realize he was as bad off as he was. And it is it is sad that we lost him. He was a phenomenal manager. He put up a lot of my crap, to get things done. And I'll probably be telling some of those stories when I attend on Friday as well. So I hope other people show up. I just out of respect. Thank you.
I'd also like to say welcome to the new officers and to Chief. Welcome and glad to have you here. When I think of Tom Healy, I remember when we hired him as manager, I was mostly relieved because when we put it out for people to apply, we got something like 48 applications. So I was just very relieved that we got through the process and hired someone who was very good for the team. All right, now we have an executive session.
We can take a hip over that one.
We'll take a little break here to sleep it to the next. So we need a motion here.
Go, Jack, give up the DC.
Second.
Good. Call the roll, I guess, please.
I will. Councilmember Alcantara?
Yes.
Mayor Carrington?
Yes.
Councilmember Cooper?
Yes.
Councilmember Irby?
Yes.
Councilmember Graver?
Yes.
Councilmember Hudson?
Yes.
It is unanimous.
Okay. Now we can
You
take a break.
want to break where we close things down?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any You're all, you're
When things blowing it over.
Yeah. The one breath of ventilation in this room.
Yeah.